Rain made the alley behind Mercy General look like a wound that refused to close. Elena Carter heard the gunshots before she saw the man. 3 cracks split the night beyond the ambulance bay, sharp enough to freeze every nurse at the ER desk. For one breath, nobody moved. Then the city swallowed the sound beneath sirens, thunder, and the endless hiss of rain against glass. Elena should have stayed inside. She should have called security. She should have done anything except step through the back exit with a trauma kit clutched in one hand and her heart punching against her ribs. But then she saw him. A man in black staggered from the shadows, one hand pressed hard beneath his ribs, rain pouring down his face, blood sliding between his fingers. He was tall, too controlled for someone losing that much blood. Even wounded, he moved like danger had been trained into his bones. His eyes found hers, cold, dark, commanding, not pleading, warning. "Go back inside," he said. His voice was low and rough, but it carried through the storm like an order. Elena stood frozen under the flickering emergency light. "You're bleeding." His mouth tightened. "I said go back inside." A black SUV screamed past the alley entrance, tires slicing through water. Headlights swept across the brick walls. The man shoved himself backward into the darkness, jaw locked, breath shallow. Elena's stomach dropped. Someone was looking for him, and whoever they were close. She should have run. Instead, she stepped toward him. "I'm a nurse," she whispered. "Let me help you." Something changed in his face then, not softness, not gratitude, something sharper, suspicion, anger, maybe fear, buried so deep it almost looked like rage. "You don't know who I am." "No," Elena said, forcing her voice steady. "But I know what happens if you keep standing there." He stared at her for one terrible second, rain dripping from his dark hair, blood staining the front of his black shirt. Then his knees buckled. Elena caught him before he hit the pavement. The weight of him nearly took her down. His body was burning hot beneath the soaked fabric, all muscle and tension, his breath uneven against her shoulder. When his hand closed around her wrist, it wasn't weak, it was possessive, a warning grip. "If they find me here," he rasped, "they'll kill you too." The words should have made her let go. They didn't. Elena dragged him through the rear service door, pulse screaming in her ears. The hallway beyond was empty, lit by cold fluorescent lights that buzzed like insects. Every step left a trail of red water behind them. "Can you walk?" she whispered. He gave a humorless breath. "I've walked through worse," but his body betrayed him. His shoulder slammed into the wall. Elena tightened her grip around his waist and guided him into the old supply room near the closed surgical wing, the one nobody used since the renovation. The door shut behind them with a soft click. For a moment, there was only darkness, rain, and his breath. Elena flicked on a small examination lamp. The light revealed everything. Blood soaked through his shirt. A wound near his ribs. Another graze along his shoulder. Bruises blooming under his collarbone. And beneath the open edge of his jacket, the unmistakable shape of a gun tucked against his side. Elena went still. He noticed. Of course he noticed. His eyes lifted to hers, unreadable. "Still want to help?" Her throat tightened. "No weapons on hospital property," she said, because it was the only thing her terrified mind could find. For the first time, his mouth curved slightly. Not a smile. Something darker. "Then it's a good thing I'm not here." Elena swallowed hard and reached for scissors. "Take off the jacket." His gaze stayed locked on her face. "You're shaking." "I'm cold." "You're lying." She cut through his shirt instead of answering. The blade slid along soaked fabric, exposing bandages that had been wrapped badly before he ever reached her. Not hospital work. Field work. Fast. Desperate. Whoever this man was, someone had tried to save him before, and failed. Elena pressed gauze to the wound. He sucked in a breath but didn't make a sound. Not one. His hand closed around the metal shelf beside him until his knuckles turned pale. "What's your name?" she asked. His eyes narrowed. "You don't want it. I need something to call you besides the man bleeding all over my supply room." A pause. Thunder rolled above the hospital. Then he said, "Luca." The name felt dangerous the second it touched the air. Elena froze. Luca Moretti. She had heard that name whispered by cops in the ER, by detectives who came in after midnight with broken suspects and sealed mouths. She had seen it buried in headlines about bodies found in expensive cars, about crime families, about men too powerful to arrest and too feared to betray. Her hand faltered against his ribs. He watched realization spread across her face. "There it is," he murmured. Elena backed up one step. "You're Luca Moretti." His expression hardened. "And now you understand why I told you to walk away." A loud bang echoed from somewhere beyond the hallway. Elena's blood turned cold. Voices followed. Men's voices, not hospital staff. Luca reached for his gun, but his fingers slipped, slick with blood. Elena grabbed his wrist before he could move. "You'll tear the wound open." "They're already inside," he said. Another bang. Closer this time. Someone was kicking open doors. Elena looked at Luca, then at the thin supply room door, then at the bloody trail they had left in the hallway. Her breath caught. Luca's eyes burned into hers. "Listen to me carefully," he whispered. "If they ask, you never saw me." The doorknob outside began to turn, and Elena realized the most dangerous choice of her life had already been made. Top of form. Bottom of form. The doorknob stopped halfway. Elena stood so still. She could hear her own blood moving. Luca's wounded hand tightened around the edge of the metal shelf. His face had gone pale beneath the harsh lamp, but his eyes were violently awake, fixed on the door like he could kill whoever stood outside by will alone. Another voice came from the hall. "Check every room." Elena's lungs forgot how to work. The knob moved again. Luca's gaze snapped to her. Not panic. Comment? He mouthed one word. Hid. But there was nowhere to hide him. The supply room was too small, too bright, too full of evidence. Blood on the floor. Blood on her hands. Blood soaking the torn black shirt lying near her shoes. Elena moved before she could think. She killed the examination lamp. Darkness swallowed them. The door cracked open. A slice of hallway light cut across the floor, stopping inches from Luca's boots. Elena stepped into it. A man in a dark jacket stood outside, rainwater dripping from his shoulders. He wasn't hospital security. He wasn't police. His eyes moved over her scrubs, her badge, her face, then lower, to her bloody hands. Elena's heart dropped. The man's stare sharpened. "You alone in here?" She forced herself to breathe, forced herself to look annoyed instead of terrified. "I was cleaning up after a trauma patient," she said. "This wing is closed. You can't be back here." The man didn't move. Behind her, in the dark, Luca was silent, too silent. The man leaned slightly, trying to see past her. Elena shifted her body, blocking the gap. "You need to return to the main ER entrance," she said louder now. "I'm calling security." His mouth curled. "Security's busy." Cold crawled up her spine. From somewhere down the hall came another crash. A door being kicked open. Someone cursed. Footsteps splashed through the wet blood trail they had dragged in from the alley. The man at the door looked at her badge. "Elena Carter," he read softly. The way he said her name felt like a hand closing around her throat. Then his eyes flicked back to her face. "You see anyone come through here tonight, Elena?" She held his stare. No. The lie came out clean. So clean it scared her. The man smiled. For one impossible second, Elena thought he knew everything. That he could hear Luca bleeding in the dark behind her. That he could see the tremor in her fingers. that he understood exactly what kind of man she was hiding and exactly what it would cost her. Then a voice shouted from the hallway, "Marco?" "Nothing here." The man didn't look away from Elena. "Nothing here," he repeated. But his voice was different, lower, like a promise. He stepped back. The door closed. Elena didn't move until his footsteps faded. Then her knees almost gave out. A hand caught her before she fell. Luca, even half conscious, bleeding, hunted and barely standing. He caught her by the waist and pulled her back from the door. "Elena," he whispered. The sound of her name in his mouth was too intimate, too dangerous. She turned on the lamp again with shaking fingers. His face was closer than she expected. Rain still clung to his hair. His jaw was tight with pain, but his eyes were locked on her with an intensity that made the small room feel even smaller. "You shouldn't have done that," he said. She laughed once, breathless and broken. "You're welcome." His expression didn't soften. "You don't understand what you just did. I lied to a man with a gun, apparently. You lied to the Belandi family." The name meant nothing to her, but the way Luca said it made her stomach turn. "They'll remember your face," he continued. "They'll remember your name. And if they think you helped me, they don't know. They suspect." His voice dropped. "That's enough." Elena looked down at her hands. Red stained every line of her palms. For years, blood had never scared her. She had held pressure on wounds, cut clothes off crash victims, watched strangers beg God to let them live. She knew how to stay calm when everyone else broke. But this blood felt different. This blood had a shadow attached to it, a world attached to it, his world. And now, somehow, her hands were inside it. "You need stitches," she said, because medicine was easier than fear. "Elena, sit down." "Elena," I said, "sit down." For the first time, Luca Moretti obeyed. He lowered himself onto an old examination stool, his body stiff with pain. Elena pulled on fresh gloves and reached for the suture kit she kept hidden in the supply room for emergencies. She was never supposed to handle alone. Her fingers moved quickly because they had to. Clean the wound, assess the depth, control the bleeding. Do not look at his face. Do not think about the men outside. Do not think about how his hand had felt on her waist. "You're good at this," he said. "I'm a nurse." "No." His eyes followed every movement. "You're calm when you're afraid." Elena didn't answer, because he was wrong. She wasn't calm. She was surviving. There was a difference. The needle pierced skin. Luca didn't flinch, but his breathing changed. A small shift, a slight tension in his throat. Elena caught it immediately. "You feel pain," she said quietly. His eyes darkened. "Everyone feels pain. You hide it well. So do you." Her hands paused. The room seemed to lose sound for half a second. Then, Elena continued stitching. She didn't ask what he meant. She didn't want to know how a man like Luca Moretti could look at her for 5 minutes and find something she had spent years burying. The truth was, Elena Carter had built her whole life around being useful. Useful daughters didn't complain when bills piled up. Useful sisters didn't cry when their younger brother needed medication she could barely afford. Useful nurses took double shifts, slept in cars, smiled at doctors who talked down to them, and pretended exhaustion was a personality trait. Useful women did not fall apart, not even when rent was late, not even when collection notices arrived in pink envelopes, not even when their mother called from Arizona asking for money Elena didn't have. Using guilt like a language she had perfected, Elena tied off the final stitch and reached for gauze. Luca watched her too closely. "You live alone?" he asked. Her eyes snapped up. "That's none of your business." "So yes." I said none of your business. A faint shadow of amusement crossed his face. "You're brave with men who can ruin your life. I work in an ER. You're not special." That almost made him smile. Almost. Then another distant shout cut through the hallway. Elena Stifana. Luca's expression changed instantly. The wounded man disappeared. Something colder took his place. Predator. They're still inside, she whispered. They won't leave until they're sure. What do they want from you? His silence answered before he did. Blood, Luca said. Elena stared at him. He looked away first. For the first time since she had dragged him inside, she saw something behind the power. Not weakness, never that. But weight. The kind a man carried after too many graves, had his name carved into them without anyone seeing the letters. You should call the police, she said. His laugh was low and humorless. Some of them already work for the men hunting me. The words settled between them like poison. Elena thought of the detectives who came through Mercy General after midnight. The ones who never signed in. The ones nurses avoided. The ones who asked too many questions after certain bodies arrived. She thought of Marco reading her badge. Elena Carter, her name in his mouth. Her hands began to tremble again. Luca noticed. Of course he did. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers closed around her wrist. Not hard this time. Warm, steady, shockingly careful. They will come for you if they connect you to me, he said. So when I leave, you will forget this happened. When you leave? She stared at the fresh bandage wrapped around his ribs. You can barely stand. I've stood with worse. You keep saying that like it makes you sound invincible. His eyes held hers. No, it means worse is coming. A chill moved through her. Before she could respond, the intercom crackled overhead. A nurse's voice trembled through the old speaker system. Lockdown protocol initiated. All staff remain in secure areas. Repeat. All staff remain in secure areas. Elena's blood went cold. Luca slowly turned his head toward the door. Then the hallway lights went out. For one breath, the whole hospital vanished into darkness. Emergency red lights flickered on. Luca stood, pain tearing across his face for only a second before he buried it again. Elena grabbed his arm. No, you'll reopen. He covered her mouth with his hand. Not rough. Urgent. Footsteps moved outside the supply room. Slow this time. Careful. Someone had come back. A shadow stopped beneath the door. Then Marco's voice drifted through the darkness. Miss Carter, he called softly. I think you forgot to clean something up. Elena's heart stopped so violently it felt like the room had been pulled out from under her. Luca's hand remained over her mouth, warm and steady. His body pressed close enough that she could feel the heat coming off him through his soaked shirt and bandages. His breathing was shallow, controlled by force. But beneath his palm she felt the tremor of her own breath trying to escape. Outside the door, Marco waited. The emergency lights pulsed red across the supply room, turning the metal shelves into bars, turning Luca's face into something carved from shadow and blood. Miss Carter, Marco said again, almost gently. Open the door. Luca lowered his hand from her mouth. His eyes locked on hers. Do not move. That was what his stare said. Elena wished she could obey, but the hallway outside was silent in a way that terrified her. Not empty. Listening. Then came a soft scrape against the floor. Something slid beneath the door. A strip of torn black fabric. Luca's shirt. The piece Elena had cut away from his body. Her stomach dropped. They had found the evidence. Marco chuckled softly from the other side. You really should be more careful with your patients. Luca's jaw tightened. Elena saw his hand move toward the gun tucked against his side. She grabbed his wrist before he could reach it. His eyes flashed. She shook her head once. No. The look he gave her was lethal. Not at her. At the idea of being helpless. At the idea of letting someone else decide whether she lived. But if he fired inside the hospital, everything would collapse. Security, police, patients, nurses, her life, all of it. Elena stepped back from Luca and pulled the door open before fear could stop her. Marco stood in the hallway under the red emergency light, holding his hands loosely in front of him like he had all the time in the world. Two men flanked him, both in dark coats, both too still, both with the dead-eyed calm of men used to violence. Behind them, the closed surgical wing stretched into darkness. The floor told the truth. Smears of blood, wet footprints, red streaks, leading straight to the supply room. Elena forced herself to look angry. Not guilty, not afraid. Angry. "You need to leave," she said. "This hospital is under lockdown." Marco looked at the blood trail, then at her face. "You always work this hard after your shift ends." "I'm treating patients during an emergency." His smile widened. "Funny. I don't see a patient." Elena folded her arms, praying he wouldn't see the blood drying beneath her nails. "Because you're not authorized to be here." One of Marco's men stepped forward. Luca moved in the darkness behind her. Elena felt it without looking. A dangerous shift in the air. Marco raised one hand, stopping his man. "No need to scare her," he said. But his eyes remained on Elena, and there was nothing gentle in them. "You know," he continued, "a woman like you should be careful. Alone in closed wings, working late, helping strangers." His gaze dropped to her badge again. "Bad things happen to good girls who get involved in men's business." Elena's throat tightened. "My business is keeping people alive." "Eva Monsters?" The question landed hard. For half a second, Elena's mind flashed to Luca, sitting under the examination lamp, blood soaking his ribs, eyes dark as sin but voice low when he said her name. "You're calm when you're afraid." She hated that he had seen her so quickly. She hated even more that Marco was trying to see her now. "I don't ask patients for their resume before I stop them from dying," she said. Marco studied her. Then he stepped closer. Too close. The smell of rain and expensive tobacco clung to him. Elena forced herself not to step back. "Where is he?" "I don't know who you mean." Marco tilted his head. "You're a terrible liar." She held his stare. "Then why are you still asking?" A flicker of irritation crossed his face. "Good. Fear made men like him feel powerful. Defiance made them sloppy." Behind Marco, the second man opened the door to the medication storage room and swept a flashlight inside. Its beam flashed across empty cabinets, dusty counters, old boxes of expired supplies. They were searching one room at a time. They would reach the supply room next. Elena's Pulse Hammer. Luca was inside, wounded, armed and furious. If Marco stepped through the doorway, someone would die. Maybe all of them. Marco's voice softened. "You have no idea what you're standing between." "Then explain it to hospital administration." He laughed. "Hospital administration?" He looked around the dead wing with mocking amusement. "Sweetheart, half the people upstairs are pretending not to hear us right now." Elena's face burned at the insult. Not because he called her sweetheart, because part of her knew he was right. Mercy General was brave in daylight. In daylight, doctors gave speeches about ethics and duty. Nurses signed posters about safety. Administrators talked about zero tolerance and protected staff. At night, the truth came through the back doors. Men with money. Men with guns. Men whose names made security guards suddenly remember urgent tasks elsewhere. Elena had seen it before. She had seen the way powerful men made entire buildings look away. But tonight, they wanted her to look away too, and she couldn't. Marco leaned closer. "Luca Moretti is not worth dying for." Elena's breath hitched. There it was. The name. Open now. No more pretending. "I'm not dying for anyone," she said. "No?" Marco's eyes sharpened. "Then why is there blood on your shoes?" Elena looked down before she could stop herself. A mistake. Marco saw it. His smile returned. He reached out and touched the edge of her sleeve. Elena jerked away. In the supply room behind her, something metal clicked. Tiny. Almost nothing. But Marco heard it. His smile vanished. For one frozen second, nobody breathed. Then Marco looked past Elena's shoulder into the dark room. "There you are," he whispered. The world exploded. Luca moved, like pain had never existed. He yanked Elena backward with one arm and drove the supply room door into Marco's chest with the other. Marco slammed into the wall. One of his men reached under his jacket, but Luca's gun was already out. Elena barely saw it happen. 1 second. Luca was wounded and half hidden. The next, he was death in the shape of a man. "Move," he ordered. Elena didn't move fast enough. Luca shoved her behind him, just as a shot cracked through the hallway. The sound shattered the hospital silence. Elena screamed. The bullet struck the metal shelf beside them, spraying sparks and glass. Luca fired once. Not wild, not panicked, precise. The man with the gun dropped with a cry, clutching his shoulder. Marco cursed and scrambled backward. Red lights flashed. The lockdown alarm began screaming overhead. Luca grabbed Elena's hand and pulled her into the hallway. "Run. I can't just leave." He turned on her with such fury that she stumbled. "You think they came here for a conversation?" Another shot punched into the wall behind them. Elena ran. Luca's grip was iron around her hand as he dragged her through the surgical wing. He should not have been moving. Blood was already blooming through the fresh bandage at his side, dark against white gauze, but he didn't slow. He ran like a man who had made deals with pain long ago and never paid them back. They cut through a service corridor, past locked operating rooms and abandoned carts. Emergency lights strobed over Luca's face. Every flash made him look more dangerous, more unreal, like the hospital had not hidden a wounded man but unleashed something far worse. Behind them, Marco shouted, "Find the nurse!" Elena's entire body went cold. Not find him, find the nurse. Luca heard it too. His grip tightened. They burst through a stairwell door and descended 2 floors. Elena nearly slipped on the wet soles of her shoes. Luca caught her without looking, his arm wrapping around her waist, lifting her back to balance with terrifying ease. "You're bleeding again," she gasped. "Later, you could collapse. Then drag me. This is not funny. I'm not joking." They reached the basement level. The air changed. Colder, damper, mechanical. The old hospital tunnel stretched ahead, lined with pipes and utility doors, humming with generators and forgotten air vents. Elena had been down here only twice during training. Nobody liked the basement. Too many blind corners. Too much dead space. Too far from help. Luca released her hand and braced one palm against the wall. Only then did she see it. His face had gone grey. The movement, the blood loss, the fight, it was catching up to him. "Luca," he pushed away from the wall. "Keep walking." "No." His eyes cut to hers. "This is not the time to argue. It is exactly the time because you are about 30 seconds from passing out. I don't pass out. You're a patient. Patients lie." His mouth tightened. Elena stepped closer, anger rising because fear had nowhere else to go. "You dragged me into the basement. Men are hunting me by name. There is a bullet hole in my workplace, and you're still acting like controlling your facial expression is medical treatment." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise. Then, impossibly, admiration. It vanished fast, but she saw it. Footsteps thundered somewhere above them. Luca looked toward the ceiling. Elena pulled him into a maintenance room before he could argue. It was narrow and hot, filled with pipes, cleaning chemicals, and a sink with rust around the drain. She locked the door, then pushed him down onto an overturned crate. He gave her a look that would have made smarter people back away. Elena grabbed gauze from her pocket. "Shirt up." "Elena." "Shirt up." For a second, the Mafia boss of Chicago stared at her like no one had spoken to him that way in years. Then he obeyed again. The bandage was soaked. Elena pressed fresh gauze to the wound. Luca's hand closed over hers. forcing pressure harder than she dared. His skin was hot. Too hot. "You're losing too much blood," she whispered. "I know." His honesty scared her more than denial would have. A muffled crash echoed from above. They were searching downward. Elena looked at the locked door. "Why are they doing this?" Luca didn't answer. She turned back to him. "No more half-truths. They know my name now. They're hunting me. I deserve to know why." His jaw flexed. For once, he looked away. That scared her too, because men like Luca Moretti did not look away, unless the truth was worse than violence. "The Balandis hit my convoy tonight," he said. "They weren't supposed to know the route. So someone betrayed you." "Yes." "Then why come here?" His eyes returned to hers. The red emergency light from the tiny window in the door cut across his face, painting his cheekbone, his mouth, the blood on his throat. "Because the only person I trusted was already dead." Elena's anger faltered. Something heavy moved through the room. Not confession. Grief. Buried deep, but not gone. She softened despite herself. "Who?" "My brother." The words were quiet. Too quiet. Elena's hand slowed against the bandage. Luca looked at her like he regretted saying it. Then he continued, voice rougher. "He died 2 hours before the ambush. Same hospital system. Different location. Official report says overdose. You don't believe that?" "I know it wasn't." Elena's stomach twisted. "What does that have to do with me?" Luca stared at her. Long enough that dread began to build under her ribs. "Because before he died," Luca said, "he sent me a message." Elena barely breathed. "What message?" Luca reached inside his jacket and pulled out a phone with a cracked screen. His thumb moved once, twice. The screen lit his face from below, making his eyes look almost black. He turned it toward her. There was a photo, blurry, taken from across a hospital parking lot. A woman in blue scrubs, walking to her car after a late shift, hair tied loosely, shoulders bent with exhaustion, one hand holding a cheap paper coffee cup. Elena stared at herself. Her mouth went dry. "That's me." Luca's voice dropped to something almost dangerous in its tenderness. "Yes." The room seemed to tilt. Elena backed away one step. "Why would your brother have a picture of me?" Luca stood slowly, ignoring the blood at his side. "Because he believed you were the only person who could identify the woman who killed him." Elena's skin went cold. "I don't know anything about your brother. You saw something that night." "No, you did. I would remember." "You were working trauma intake 3 nights ago," Luca said. "A woman came through the ER using a fake badge. Blonde hair, grey coat. She walked past security with a medication case." Elena's breath caught. A memory flickered. A woman. Grey coat. Too calm. Wrong shoes for hospital staff. Elena had noticed her because nurses noticed details. Because details saved lives. Because something about that woman had felt off. But then a drunk driver had come in with a shattered leg. A child had coded in Bay 2, and the woman had disappeared into the chaos. Elena whispered, "I thought she was pharmacy." Luca's gaze sharpened. "You remember?" The pipes hummed around them. Above, another door slammed. Elena pressed a hand to her mouth. No. This has nothing to do with me. It does now. You don't get to say that like it's nothing. It isn't nothing." Luca stepped closer. "It is why they came back for you." Her eyes lifted to his. "They know I saw her. They think you saw enough." Elena's body went numb. All night, she had believed she had made one reckless choice in an alley. But this had started before Luca ever stumbled into the rain. Before the blood. Before the lie. Before Marco said her name. Someone had already marked her. She turned toward the door, panic rising fast. "I need to call my brother." Luca grabbed her arm. "No, he's at my apartment." "Elena, listen to me." "No, you listen to me." Her voice cracked. My brother is 19. He has epilepsy, and he is alone. If these men know my name, they can find my address. They can find him. For the first time, Luca's control fractured. Not much, just enough. A flash of something brutal crossed his face. Rage, immediate and cold. What is his name? Elena blinked through panic. Mason. Luca pulled out his phone. Who are you calling? Someone who still owes me loyalty. You said you couldn't trust anyone. I said the only person I trusted was dead. His eyes lifted. That doesn't mean everyone else wants to die tonight. He tapped the screen and raised the phone to his ear. For several seconds, silence. Then he said, "Find Elena Carter's apartment. Secure the boy inside. No uniforms, no sirens. If anyone touches him, burn the city down." Elena stared at him. The words should have terrified her. They did. But beneath the terror came something worse. Relief. Luca ended the call. Elena hated herself for the way her knees weakened. You can't just send men to my apartment. I already did. You don't own me. His eyes burned into hers. No, but they are hunting you because of me, because of your brother, because of my world. The honesty hit harder than arrogance. Elena turned away, breathing too fast. For years, danger had been bills, overdrafts, eviction notices, emergency calls from school, late-night seizures, and the crushing knowledge that nobody was coming to help. Now danger wore expensive coats and carried guns through hospital corridors. And somehow the man beside her, bleeding, ruthless, impossible, was both the reason and the only shield. A sound crackled overhead. The basement intercom. Static first. Then Marco's voice filled the maintenance room from the speaker above the door. Elena Carter. She froze. Luca went still. Marco's voice was calm, almost amused. We know you're listening. We also know about Mason. Elena's vision blurred. Luca's face became terrifyingly blank. Marco continued. Bring Luca Moretti to the ambulance bay in 5 minutes, and your brother keeps breathing. The intercom crackled. Then one final sentence slipped through the speaker, like a knife. Choose carefully, nurse. Elena stopped breathing. The maintenance room seemed to shrink around her, pipes pressing in from every side, hot air turning thick in her lungs. Marco's voice had vanished from the intercom, but the threat remained in the silence, alive and poisonous. We know about Mason. Her brother's name echoed louder than the alarm. Luca didn't move. That frightened her more than if he had cursed, shouted, or reached for his gun. His face had emptied completely. No pain, no fear, no visible rage. Only stillness. Deadly stillness. Elena turned on him. You said your men were going to secure him. They are. But Marco knows about him. Yes. How? Luca's jaw tightened. Because someone inside my circle is feeding them information faster than I can move. Elena's stomach twisted. 5 minutes. Her brother had 5 minutes because she had dragged a wounded stranger into a supply room. Because she had lied. Because she had stood between two monsters and believed, stupidly, that a locked door and a nurse's uniform could protect anyone. I have to go, she whispered. Luca's eyes cut to her. No, he's my brother, and walking into that ambulance bay will not save him. You don't know that. I know men like Marco. No. Her voice broke. You know men like you. Something flashed across Luca's face, a wound deeper than the ones beneath his bandage. Elena regretted the words the moment they left her mouth, but fear was already tearing through her too fast to stop. I'm not staying here while they hurt Mason, she said. I raised him. I held him through seizures when he was 10, and Mom was too drunk to hear him choking. I worked doubles so he could have medication. I signed his school forms. I sat outside neurologists' offices praying insurance wouldn't deny another refill. He is not collateral in your war. Luca stared at her. The emergency light pulsed red over his face. For once, He didn't answer quickly. When he spoke, his voice was quieter. I know. No, you don't. I know what it means to raise a brother. The word stopped her. Luca looked away, and for the first time, all night, the powerful man in front of her seemed older than his face, not weaker, worn, as if every choice he had ever made had left fingerprints beneath his skin. My brother's name was Matteo, he said. Elena Froze. The name landed in the room like a candle, lit in a tomb. He was 11 when our father was killed, Luca continued. I was 19. Old enough to inherit enemies. Not old enough to protect him from them. His mouth tightened, so I taught him how to survive, how to read a room, how to spot a lie, how to never sit with his back to a door. Elena's anger faltade. Luca's eyes returned to hers, and he still died in a hospital bed with poison in his veins, while I was 10 minutes away. The rawness in his voice was almost invisible. Almost. But Elena heard it. Beneath the control, beneath the dominance, beneath the terrifying calm, there was grief, not the kind that cried, the kind that became a weapon. Luca stepped closer. I will not let them use your brother the way they used mine. Her throat tightened. Then help me. I am. You're standing here. I'm thinking. We don't have time. His eyes sharpened. That is why you need to stop panicking. Elena slapped him. The sound cracked through the maintenance room before she realized she had moved. Luca's face turned slightly with the force of it. For 1 second, absolute silence swallowed them. Elena stared at her own hand, horrified. Luca slowly turned back. There was no anger in his eyes. That was worse. I am panicking, she whispered, because I am not like you. I do not know how to turn terror into strategy. I don't know how to hear my brother's life threatened and stay calm. Luca looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached up and touched the place where she had struck him, almost absently. You're wrong, he said. A bitter laugh escaped her. About what? You've been doing it all night. Elena's breath caught. Luca took one slow step closer. You lied to armed men with blood on your hands. You stitched me while they searched the hallway. You ran through gunfire without falling apart. You remembered a woman from 3 nights ago because your mind notices things other people miss. His voice lowered. You are not helpless, Elena. You are just terrified because someone finally found the one thing you would die for. Her eyes burned. Mason, her sweet, stubborn, brilliant brother who left cereal bowls in the sink and texted her memes during night shifts and pretended he didn't know how afraid she was every time his medication ran low. She would die for him. Instantly. Without question. And Luca saw it. Of course he did. He saw every weakness like it had been written on her skin. A vibration cut through the room. Luca's phone. He answered immediately. Speak. Elena watched his face. Nothing changed at first. Then something in his eyes went colder. Not fear. Confirmation. His voice dropped. Where? A pause. Keep eyes on them. Do not engage unless they enter the apartment. Elena stepped closer. What happened? Luca ended the call. She already knew before he spoke. 2 Belandi men are outside your building. The floor seemed to fall away. No, they haven't gone in. Yet. His silence was answer enough. Elena grabbed for the door handle, but Luca caught her around the waist and pulled her back. She fought him, not carefully, not rationally. She drove her elbow into his wounded side. Luca sucked in a sharp breath. But he didn't let go. Let me go. No, I swear to God, Luca. If you go to that ambulance bay, Marco kills you, takes me, and still uses your brother as leverage. You don't know that. I do. His voice turned brutal. Because that is what I would do. Elena stopped struggling. The admission hung between them, ugly and honest. Luca didn't soften it. He didn't pretend to be better than the men hunting them. Maybe that was what made him more terrifying, and maybe, in a twisted way, more trustworthy. Because he was not selling her comfort. He was giving her the truth. Elena looked at him, breathing hard. Then what do we do? For the first time, something like approval moved across his face. Not because she obeyed, because she asked the right question. Luca released her slowly. We make Marco believe he is getting what he wants. Meaning? I go to the ambulance bay. No. Yes. They'll kill you. His mouth curved slightly. They'll try. You can barely stand. I don't need to win a war in the ambulance bay. I need Marco in the open. Elena stared at him. You're using yourself as bait. I'm using his arrogance against him. And me? His chaser held hers. You are going to save your brother. A small, terrible hope sparked inside her chest. How? Luca pulled the cracked phone back out and opened a locked folder. Inside were files, photos, names, hospital access logs, security stills, faces she didn't recognize. Then he swiped to the blurry parking lot photo of her. Elena's stomach clenched again. Matteo didn't send me your picture because you were only a witness, Luca said. Her pulse slowed. What does that mean? He was investigating Mercy General before he died. Investigating? Luca's expression hardened. 3 months ago, men connected to the Belandi family started moving through hospital networks under fake medical transfers. Patients disappeared. Bodies were signed out under wrong names. Evidence from crime scenes vanished before police arrived. Elena's blood chilled. Mercy General was already corrupt, not just afraid, involved. Matteo believed someone here was helping them, Luca said. Elena whispered. The woman in the grey coat. Yes. She killed him? She delivered the injection. Elena covered her mouth. The memory sharpened now with cruel clarity. Grey coat, blonder hair, medication case, hospital badge clipped too high, walking calmly toward the restricted elevator. Elena had noticed her. Elena had almost stopped her. But then the trauma alarm had sounded. She had turned away. Her voice trembled. I let her pass. Luca's eyes darkened. You didn't know. I saw something wrong. You were doing your job. I should have said something. If blame could resurrect the dead, he said quietly, I would have brought back half my family by now. That silenced her. The words were too heavy, too lived in. Then Luca zoomed in on one of the security images. A woman in a grey coat stood beside a man near a hospital elevator. Her face was partly turned away, but the man beside her was clear. Elena's heart slammed. She knew him. Not from the news, not from the ER, from hospital administration meetings, safety emails, charity fundraisers, smiling photos near donation plaques. Dr. Whitmore, she breathed. Luca watched her reaction. You know him. He's the chief medical officer. He's the Belandi's inside door. Elena shook her head slowly. No, he runs the hospital. He runs more than that. The room tilted again. Dr. Alan Whitmore. Polished, calm, always talking about patient dignity while cutting overnight staff, always shaking donors' hands, always reminding nurses to report suspicious activity through the proper channels. And all this time, suspicious activity had been standing at the top. Elena thought of lockdowns that were never explained. Bodies moved too quickly, files that disappeared, detectives who bypassed check-in. Her skin went cold. Luca stepped closer. Matteo was going to expose him. That's why he died. And now, they think I can identify the woman. They don't think. Luca's gaze burned into hers. They know. How? Because Whitmore accessed your employee file 20 minutes after Matteo died. Elena felt sick. Her address, her emergency contacts, Mason, everything. Marco isn't threatening Mason because you helped me tonight, Luca said. He's threatening him because you were already marked. Elena's breath left her. There it was, the real reveal. This nightmare had not begun in the alley. She hadn't stepped into Luca's world. His world had already opened its mouth beneath her feet days ago, and she had been walking over it blind. A hard knock slammed against the maintenance room door. Elena jumped. Luca moved instantly, pulling her behind him, but the voice outside was not Marco's. "Boss," a man whispered. "It's Nico." Luca opened the door 2 inches. A young man in a black suit stood outside, rain dripping from his hair, a gun hidden low at his side. His eyes flicked to Elena, then back to Luca. "Apartment surrounded," Nico said. "We got eyes on the boy. He's alive. But Belandi has men on both exits." Elena gripped the shelf beside her to stay upright. Luca's voice remained calm. "Can you extract him?" "Not clean. Not without them knowing. Then we change what they're looking at." Nico nodded once. "Ambulance bay?" "Yes." Elena stepped forward. "No. We're not using Luca as bait unless Mason is actually moved first." Nico looked at her as if he couldn't believe she had spoken. Luca didn't. He looked almost satisfied. "Elena is right," Luca said. Nico's eyebrows lifted. Luca turned to her. "You know this hospital's systems. I know patient systems, not Mafia escape routes, security cameras, badge locks, emergency protocols." Elena stared at him. Then she understood. Her mind began moving, despite the terror. "The lockdown doors can be overridden from the nurse's station. Can you do it remotely?" "No," she swallowed. "But old surgical wing badge access still routes through the basement maintenance terminal." Nico looked impressed, despite himself. Luca's eyes stayed on Elena. "Can you open the east service tunnel?" "Yes, but it leads to the laundry loading dock." "Good." "No, not good. It's camera covered. Can you loop the cameras?" "I'm a nurse, not a hacker." Luca looked at Nico. Nico gave a tight nod. "I can." Elena's thoughts snapped into place, fast and frantic. "If your men get Mason to the laundry dock, I can unlock the tunnel for 30 seconds during the alarm reset. Security footage will glitch if the system thinks the fire doors are recalibrating." Luca stared at her. This time there was no almost admiration. It was fully there. Dangerous. Focused. "Do it," he said. Nico moved to the rusted terminal near the pipe wall, connecting a small device to the hospital maintenance port. Elena shoved him aside. "Wrong input." He blinked. She reached over him and typed with shaking hands. Her password still worked. Of course it did. Mercy General never fixed the things that mattered. The screen flickered. "Access denied." Elena swore under her breath. Luca moved behind her, close enough that his presence warmed her back. "Try again." "I know. Access denied." Her panic spiked. Nico looked toward the hall. "We're running out of time." Elena closed her eyes. Think. Whitmore had locked the system, but he wouldn't lock himself out. She typed a different access path. Administrative override. A prompt appeared. Chief authorization required. Elena's eyes narrowed. She remembered safety emails, mandatory training files, Whitmore's habit of using the same phrases, the same stupid motto printed beneath every memo. Patient dignity comes first. She typed quickly. Password accepted. The terminal unlocked. Nico exhaled. Holy hell. Elena didn't smile. She opened the east service tunnel, triggered the fire door recalibration, and watched the cameras blink red. 30 seconds. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her hand shook as she answered. For one heartbeat, there was only static. Then Mason's voice came through, terrified and breathless. Elena? Her knees nearly gave. Mason. Oh my God. Mason, listen to me. Elena. There are men outside. Someone told me to stay away from the windows. What is happening? Tears burned her eyes. I need you to do exactly what the man near the back stairwell tells you. What man? Luca gently took the phone from her hand and spoke into it. Mason, my name is Luca. I'm getting you out. A shaky silence. Then Mason said, Are you the reason my sister sounds scared? Luca looked at Elena. His voice lowered. Yes. Elena's heart twisted. Mason breathed hard through the phone. Then you better be the reason she stays alive too. Something changed in Luca's face. A quiet vow formed there before he ever spoke. I will be. Nico glanced at the terminal. Extraction team has him. Moving now. Elena watched the tiny security feed glitch, freeze, then jump. Shadows moved through the laundry corridor. Men in black. A younger figure between them. Mason. Alive. Moving. Almost safe. Then a gunshot cracked through the phone. Mason screamed. Elena lunged for the screen. Mason! The video feed cut to black. Nico cursed. Luca grabbed the phone. Report. Static. Then a voice came through, strained and panicked. Boss, Belandi knew the tunnel. They were waiting. Elena's entire body went numb. Luca's eyes turned murderous. The voice continued. They took the boy. The room spun. Elena made a sound she didn't recognize. Luca caught her before she fell, but she shoved him away, grief and terror ripping through her like fire. You promised. His face went still. She hit his chest with both hands. You promised me. He lit her, even wounded, even bleeding. He let her strike him once, twice, a third time. Then he caught her wrists, not hard, but firm enough to stop her from breaking herself against him. Elena. No, Elena. Look at me. No, look at me. The command in his voice cut through the panic. She lifted her eyes. Luca Moretti looked at her like the world had narrowed to one purpose. They took him alive because they need leverage, he said. That means we have time. Her voice shattered. How much? His jaw flexed. Then the intercom crackled again. Marco's voice returned. No longer amused. Change of plans, nurse. Elena's blood froze. You bring Luca Moretti to the old chapel under Mercy General, Marco said. 10 minutes. A pause. Then Mason's voice came through the speaker, frightened and shaking. Elena, don't. A sharp sound cut him off. Elena stopped breathing. Marco spoke again. And Luca? Come unarmed. Luca looked up at the intercom. For the first time, his mask broke completely. What showed beneath was not fear. It was war. Marco laughed softly. Or I start mailing your nurse pieces of her brother. The speaker went dead. Elena stared at Luca, trembling so hard she could barely stand. What are we going to do? Luca reached into his jacket and removed his gun. Then he handed it to Nico. For one terrible second, Elena thought he was surrendering. But Luca leaned close to Nico and spoke in a voice so cold it made the room feel suddenly airless. Call every Moretti man still loyal. Shut down every road around this hospital. Find Whitmore. Find the woman in grey. And if Belandi touches that boy again, he turned back to Elena, his eyes locked on hers. We bury them all before sunrise. Luca walked toward the old chapel without his gun. That should have made him look less dangerous. It didn't. If anything, the absence of a weapon made the air around him feel worse, as if violence had never needed metal to become real in his hands. He moved through the basement corridor with blood soaking through the bandage under his black shirt, one palm occasionally brushing the wall for balance, his face cold and unreadable beneath the flicker of emergency lights. Elena walked beside him because staying behind had never been an option. Nico had tried to stop her. Luca had not. That frightened her more. You should be with Nico, Elena whispered. Luca didn't look at her. Nico has orders, and your wound has reopened. It can wait. My brother can't. That made him turn his head. The hallway lights flashed red across his cheekbones, his dark, wet hair, the blood drying at the edge of his jaw. His eyes held hers for 1 second too long. No, he said quietly. He can't. Elena looked away first. She hated how much she wanted to believe him. The old chapel sat beneath the east wing, forgotten by most of the hospital staff. It had been built decades ago, back when Mercy General still believed suffering needed a room for prayer. Now it was used for storage and grief nobody knew where else to put. Families came down after bad news. Nurses came down when they couldn't cry upstairs. Doctors came down when guilt became too heavy to carry home. Elena had been there twice. Once after a child died in Trauma Bay 3, once after Mason's first seizure had put him on a ventilator for 9 hours. Tonight, it felt less like a chapel and more like a grave waiting to close. Luca stopped several feet before the double doors. Elena reached for him instinctively. Wait. He looked at her hand on his arm. For a moment, neither of them moved. His body was warm beneath her fingers. Too warm. Fever, maybe. Blood loss. Shock. All the things she could name and none of the things she could fix. You don't go in front of me, he said. My brother is in there. That's why you don't go in front of me. She swallowed hard. You gave Nico your gun. Luca's gaze sharpened. I gave Nico one gun. Elena stared at him. Then, beneath the torn edge of his coat, she saw the faint outline of a blade strapped flat against his forearm. Of course a man like Luca Moretti did not walk unarmed into a trap. He simply changed the meaning of armed. You lied, she said. I adapted. That's just lying with confidence. For half a second, something flickered at the corner of his mouth, almost a smile. Then the chapel door creaked open from the inside. A man Elena didn't recognize stood in the doorway, black coat buttoned tight, one hand hidden at his waist. No weapons, he said. Luca's expression did not change. Then search me. The man stepped forward. Elena's pulse speaked. Luca lifted his arms slightly, controlled, bored, almost insulting in his calm. The man patted him down fast, avoiding the bloody wound but checking his jacket, waistband, boots. He missed the blade. Luca's eyes never left Elena's face while it happened, as if the search was meaningless, as if the real danger was whether she fell apart before they got Mason back. Then the man looked at Elena. Her too. Luca moved. Not much. Just one step. But the air changed. The man's hand froze inches from Elena's arm. Luca's voice dropped. Touch her, and lose the hand. The man laughed nervously, trying to recover power he had already lost. Boss said no weapons. She's a nurse, Luca said. If she had one, you would already be bleeding. Elena should not have felt anything at that. Not warmth, not safety, not the strange, breathless ache in her chest when a dangerous man placed himself between her and another dangerous man like it was instinct. The guard hesitated, then stepped back. Inside. Luca entered first. Elena followed. The old chapel was lit by battery lanterns arranged along the floor. Their white glow cast long shadows up the walls, across dusty pews, cracked stained glass, and a wooden cross that looked down on everything with silent judgment. At the front of the chapel, Mason sat tied to a chair. Elena's world narrowed to him. Mason, his head snapped up. Elena, don't come closer. His face was pale, one cheek bruised, glasses crooked. His hands were tied behind the chair, but he was alive, breathing, looking at her with terror and anger and that stubborn Carter fire she had spent years trying to protect. Elena took a step. Luca caught her wrist, not to control her, to remind her. She stopped, trembling. Marco stood beside Mason, one hand resting casually on the back of the chair. He looked cleaner now, calmer. His dark jacket had been changed. A small cut marked his lip from when Luca had slammed him into the wall earlier. He smiled when he saw them. There they are, Marco said. The nurse and the king. Luca's face remained empty. Let the boy go. Marco's smile widened. You first. I'm here. No. Marco stepped forward. You're standing. Breathing. Still looking at me like you've already decided how I die. His eyes slid to Elena. Romantic, really, but not surrender. Mason struggled against the rope. Elena, who the hell is this guy? Mason, stop moving, Elena said, voice shaking. Please. Marco looked amused. You didn't tell him? That's cruel. He leaned closer to Mason. Your sister has been hiding Luca Moretti. The Luca Moretti, Chicago's favorite ghost story. Mason stared at Luca. Then, Elena. You hid a Mafia boss? Elena's throat tightened. It's complicated. Mason let out a panicked, disbelieving laugh. That's your answer? Marco chuckled. I like him. Luca's eyes never left Marco. You wanted me. You have me. Not exactly. Marco walked slowly down the aisle, hands open, theatrical in the quiet chapel. I wanted you frightened. But that seems impossible. I wanted you weak. You bleed beautifully, but you're still standing. I wanted you alone. His gaze drifted to Elena. That part got interesting. Elena felt Luca's body go still beside her. Marco noticed. Of course he did. His smile sharpened. Oh, Marco murmured. There it is. Luca said nothing. Marco turned fully toward Elena. You have no idea what you've done to him, do you? Elena's skin prickled. Don't talk to her, Luca said. Marco ignored him. For 10 years, men have tried to find Luca Moretti's weakness. Money didn't work. Family didn't work after we buried most of it. Women? He laughed softly. He never kept them close enough to matter. Elena's heart pounded. Luca's jaw flexed. Marco stepped closer, savoring every word. Then you dragged him out of the rain, and suddenly the man who never negotiates walks into my chapel bleeding and unarmed. He came for my brother, Elena said. Marco's eyes glittered. No, sweetheart. He came because you asked. The words struck too deeply. Elena looked at Luca before she could stop herself. He didn't look back. That was answer enough. Marco saw it. His delight was almost cruel. There it is again. He spread his arms. This is why I love hospitals. So much pain. So many secrets. Everyone pretending they don't need saving. Luca's voice turned deadly calm. Enough theater. Marco's smile vanished. The chapel quieted. Even Mason stopped struggling. Marco looked Luca up and down. You know, my father warned me about you. Said Luca Moretti doesn't rage. He calculates. He said if I ever had you wounded, cornered, and outnumbered, I should still assume I was already standing inside your trap. Luca's eyes were black. Your father was smarter than you. Marco struck him. The sound cracked through the chapel. Elena gasped and stepped forward, but Luca didn't move. His head turned slightly from the blow. Blood opened fresh at the corner of his mouth. Then he slowly looked back at Marco. The look on his face made Elena's breath catch. Not pain, not anger, a promise. Marco laughed, but it sounded thinner now. You see, he said to Elena, this is the monster you saved. He's not the one who kidnapped my brother. No, Marco said softly. He is the reason your brother became useful. Elena's fear sharpened into hatred. You're a coward. Marco turned toward her. Luca's hand closed around Elena's wrist, but she pulled free. Something had shifted inside her. Maybe it was seeing Mason tied to a chair. Maybe it was hearing Marco turn her love for her brother into entertainment. Maybe it was exhaustion, fear, blood, and the sudden brutal knowledge that begging men like Marco only taught them how low you would kneel. Elena lifted her chin. You needed a 19-year-old boy with a medical condition because you couldn't beat a wounded man by yourself. The chapel went silent. Mason stared at her like she had lost her mind. Marco's face tightened. Luca looked at Elena then, fully, and the look in his eyes nearly undid her. Pride. dark and fierce and dangerous. Marco stepped toward Elena. Careful. No. Her voice shook, but she didn't stop. You like frightening people who can't fight back. Nurses, patients, sick boys. That doesn't make you powerful. It makes you small. Marco moved fast. Too fast. His hand shot toward her face. Luca caught his wrist before the blow landed. The sound of bone under pressure was soft. Marco's smile disappeared. Luca leaned close. I told you not to touch her. For 1 second, Elena thought he would break Marco's wrist right there. Then a gun cocked behind Mason's head. Everyone froze. The guard at the front had his weapon pressed near Mason's temple. Let him go, Marco hissed. Luca's fingers tightened once. Marco sucked in a breath. Then Luca released him. Marco staggered back, cradling his wrist, hatred burning through his face. On your knees, he said. Luca stared at him. Marco's voice rose. On your knees, or the boy dies. Elena's blood turned to ice. Mason shook his head. Don't do it. Luca didn't look at Mason. He looked at Elena. Something passed between them then, wordless and impossible. Trust me. Her lips parted. No. But before she could speak, Luca lowered himself to his knees in the aisle. The sight hit Elena harder than any gunshot. Luca Moretti, wounded and bleeding beneath the dim chapel lanterns, kneeling not in surrender, but because her brother's life hung from the trigger behind him. Marco's eyes lit with triumph. There, he whispered. Now I believe you care. Elena's chest ached with something she refused to name. Marco stepped around Luca, circling him like a man admiring a trophy. Do you know how many men wanted to see this? He asked. How many fathers, brothers, sons you put in the ground? Luca said nothing. Marco crouched in front of him. But it wasn't revenge that brought you down. It was a nurse with sad eyes and a bleeding heart. Elena's hands curled into fists. Luca's eyes flicked once toward the old confessional booth near the side wall. Small, almost invisible, but Elena saw it. Nico, or someone else. A shadow moved behind the slatted wood. Luca was not surrendering. He was buying seconds. Elena forced herself not to react. Marco straightened and pulled a knife from his coat. Mason strained against the ropes. Leave him alone! Marco ignored him. He pressed the blade lightly beneath Luca's jaw, lifting his chin. The great Luca Moretti. Marco murmured. Brought to his knees in a hospital chapel. Luca's gaze remained steady. You talk too much. Marco's face twisted. He drove the blade down toward Luca's wounded side. Elena screamed, but Luca moved at the last possible second. The knife grazed him instead of sinking deep. In the same motion, Luca caught Marco's arm, twisted, and slammed him hard against the floor. The hidden blade from Luca's sleeve flashed into his hand. The chapel erupted. The confessional door burst open. Nico and 2 Moretti men stepped out of the shadows, weapons raised. The guard behind Mason turned. Startled, Elena moved before anyone else could. She grabbed one of the lanterns from the floor and hurled it at him. It struck his arm. The gun fired into the ceiling. Mason shouted. Elena ran. Another guard lunged for her from the side pews. She ducked instinctively, slipped on dust and spilled oil, and crashed into the aisle. Pain shot through her knee, but she scrambled up and reached Mason's chair. Elena! He yelled. I'm here. I'm here. Her hands shook violently as she worked the ropes. Behind her, the chapel became chaos. Gunshots cracked. Wood splintered. Men shouted. Luca moved through them despite the blood loss, brutal and precise. A wounded wolf tearing through a room full of men who had mistaken injury for weakness. Elena loosened one knot, then another. Mason's hands came free. Can you walk? She asked. Yeah. Run when I say. Elena, run when I say. A hand seized her hair from behind. Pain exploded across her scalp. Marco. His face was blooded now, his eyes wild. He yanked Elena backward, pressing the knife against her throat. The entire chapel froze. Luca turned. Everything about him stopped except his eyes. Those eyes found the blade at Elena's throat. Then Marco's hand in her hair. Then Elena's face. And something in Luca Moretti changed. Not rage. Something quieter. Worse. The room seemed to feel it. Even Marco's breathing shifted. "Drop your weapons," Marco barked. Nico hesitated. Marco pressed the blade harder. Elena felt the sting. A warm line of blood slid down her neck. Luca's voice came soft. "Marco." Marco dragged Elena tighter against him. "You move. She opens." Luca raised both hands slowly. His blade dropped to the floor. Nico cursed under his breath but lowered his gun. Mason stood frozen near the chair, face white with terror. Elena tried to breathe without moving her throat against the knife. Luca's eyes never left hers. Calm. Steady. Anchor. Marco laughed shakily. "Now we understand each other." Luca looked at him. "No." Marco frowned. Luca's voice dropped. "You still think she is my weakness." Marco's grip tightened. Luca took one slow step forward. "She is not." Elena's heart cracked. For one horrible second, the words hurt more than the blade. Then Luca continued. "She is the reason I stopped pretending to be civilized." Marco's face changed. Too late. The chapel doors slammed open behind them. Not Moretti men. Hospital security. Police uniforms. And at their center stood Dr. Alan Whitmore, in a perfect grey suit, calm as a funeral director, silver hair untouched by the chaos. Elena's stomach turned. Whitmore looked at the blood, the guns, Mason, Luca, and finally Elena. His expression softened into something almost paternal. "Elena," he said, "step away from him." Marco went still. Luca's eyes narrowed. Even Nico looked confused. Whitmore walked forward slowly, hands visible, voice gentle. "You've been through a traumatic event. You're confused. Luca Moretti manipulated you." Elena stared at him. This man had read her file. This man had exposed Mason. This man had let poison walk through his hospital. And now he spoke like he was saving her. "You killed Matteo Moretti," she whispered. Whitmore sighed, almost disappointed. "That is exactly what he wants you to believe." Luca's voice went cold. "Careful." Whitmore's gaze moved to him. "Mr. Moretti, wounded, armed, holding hospital staff hostage during a lockdown." He glanced at the police behind him. "That is the story the city will hear by morning." Elena felt the trap close. This was bigger than Marco, bigger than the Bellandis. Whitmore had brought uniforms. Real ones or bought ones, it didn't matter. They had walked into the chapel expecting criminals. And Luca was kneeling in blood. Guns were everywhere. Mason was tied to a chair. Elena had blood on her hands. Whitmore looked at her again. "Come here, Elena. Let me help you." Luca did not move, but his eyes flicked toward her. A warning, not because of the knife, because of Whitmore. Marco's grip on Elena loosened slightly as confusion split his attention. "This wasn't the plan." Whitmore's smile thinned. "No, Marco. Your plan was emotional, noisy, and stupid." Marco's face darkened. "Watch your mouth." Whitmore ignored him. He looked at the officers. "Secure Luca Moretti." 2 officers moved forward. Nico lifted his gun again. Half a dozen weapons pointed at him. The chapel balanced on the edge of a massacre. Elena felt Marco's knife tremble at her throat. He was losing control. Whitmore had stolen his stage. And men like Marco became most dangerous when embarrassed. Elena's eyes moved to Mason. He stood 2 steps behind Marco, free but trapped by guns on every side. If shooting started, Mason would die. Luca knew it too. She could see the calculation in his face. The impossible choice. Fight and risk Mason. Surrender and vanish into Whitmore's lie. Elena suddenly understood why Luca had looked at her the way he did earlier. Not like she was fragile, like she might surprise everyone. Her entire life had been survival. Reading moods before violence started. Watching adults lie. Learning which bills could wait and which couldn't. Noticing wrong shoes, wrong badges, wrong tones, wrong silences. She looked at Whitmore's perfect suit, at Marco's shaking knife, at the officers who avoided Whitmore's eyes, at the cross above the chapel, at the old wall-mounted fire alarm beside the first pew. Then she let her knees buckle. Marco cursed as her weight dropped suddenly against him. The knife slipped from her throat. Luca moved, fast, too fast for a wounded man. He slammed into Marco, ripping Elena free as both men crashed sideways into the pews. At the same instant, Elena threw herself toward the wall and slammed her palm down on the fire alarm. The chapel erupted in sound. Sprinklers burst open overhead. Cold water exploded from the ceiling, drenching the room, killing visibility, turning lantern light into chaos. The officers shouted. Nico fired into the ceiling. Not at anyone, at the stained glass. It shattered inward, showering the floor with glittering shards and rain-cooled air from the storm outside. Smoke from old wiring filled the chapel. Mason lunged toward Elena. She grabbed him and shoved him behind the overturned pew. Stay down. Elena, stay down. Through the water and flashing red lights, Luca rose from the wreckage with Marco's knife in his hand. Marco crawled backward, bleeding and furious. Whitmore finally lost his calm. Shoot him, he shouted. But nobody had a clean shot. Not with sprinklers. Not with civilians. Not with Elena standing between Mason and the guns, soaked in water, blood, and terror, staring at the chief medical officer like she could finally see the monster under the suit. Luca reached her side. His hand closed around her arm. We move now. Mason, with us. Nico appeared from the smoke, dragging a wounded Moretti man with one hand and aiming with the other. East tunnel is compromised. West stairwells open for maybe 30 seconds. Luca looked at Elena. Can you run? She nodded. Then Mason swayed. Elena caught him instantly. Mason? His eyes fluttered. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Stress. Fear. Missed medication. Flashing lights. A seizure warning. Mason's hands trembled. Elena's world narrowed again. Luca saw it before she spoke. What does he need? His meds are at home. Alternative. Pharmacy. 3rd floor. Levetiracetam injection if stocked. But we can't. Luca turned to Nico. Clear a path to pharmacy. Nico stared. Boss, Whitmore has police on every floor. Then make them regret using elevators. Elena grabbed Luca's sleeve. You can't fight through the hospital with him like this. We're not leaving without what he needs. Behind them, Whitmore's voice cut through the alarm. Elena Carter is aiding a known criminal. Detain her. The words echoed through the chapel. Elena looked at the officers. Some hesitated. Some didn't. And for the first time, she realized she was no longer a nurse caught in the middle. She had become part of the story they were going to bury. Luca's hand slid down from her arm to her hand. Firm. Protective. Not asking permission. Offering a choice. Once you come with me, he said quietly. There is no going back tonight. Elena looked at Mason, pale and shaking. At Whitmore, shouting orders beneath holy glass and sprinkler rain. At Marco, crawling toward a fallen gun. At Luca, bleeding beside her, dangerous enough to ruin her life, and determined enough to save the only person in it who mattered. She closed her fingers around his. Then, don't let go. Something dark and powerful moved across Luca's face. He pulled her behind him, Mason tucked between them, as Nico kicked open the side door into the smoke-filled corridor. Gunfire cracked behind them. Luca shielded Elena with his body as they ran, and behind them, in the flooded chapel beneath Mercy General, Dr. Whitmore watched the nurse disappear with the Mafia boss and understood too late that Elena Carter had not been stolen by Luca Moretti. She had chosen him. The west stairwell smelled like bleach, smoke, and rain. Elena ran with Mason's weight dragging against her side, one arm locked around his waist. Luca moving half a step behind them like a shadow made of violence. Every few seconds, Mason's legs weakened. Every few seconds, Elena felt the tremor building in his muscles and her panic sharpened. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Mason, look at me. I'm trying," he breathed. His voice was thin, too thin. The flashing emergency lights turned his face white, then red, then white again. He squeezed his eyes shut each time the alarm pulsed, jaw tight, breath hitching. Luca saw it. Of course he saw it. "Elena," he said, low and urgent. "Don't say it. He's getting worse. I know. What happens if he seizes?" She hated how calmly he asked. Not because he didn't care, but because he was already calculating where to put Mason's body, how to protect his head, how to block bullets while she kept him breathing. Elena swallowed hard. "He needs medication before that happens." Nico pushed ahead of them, gun raised, checking the landing through the narrow stairwell window. "Third floor's crawling with uniforms," he said. "2 at pharmacy corridor. More near ICU. Bought?" Luca asked. "Some. Not all. That makes it worse." Elena looked at him. "Why?" "Because the honest ones think they're stopping a hostage situation." Mason gave a weak laugh that broke into a cough. "Awesome. So we're the bad guys now." "No," Elena said, but the words sounded fragile even to her. Luca's eyes moved to Mason. "Can you walk without her?" Mason tried to straighten. His knees buckled. Luca caught him before Elena could. For one stunned second, Mason hung against Luca's chest, staring up at the man who had turned his entire night into a nightmare. Luca held him carefully. Not roughly, not impatiently, carefully. Mason blinked. "I don't like you." Luca's jaw tightened. "That makes 2 of us. Elena likes you." "Mason!" Elena snapped. "What?" "I may be dying." "I get to be honest. You're not dying." Mason's eyes flicked to her. "You always say that when you're scared." Her throat tightened. Luca looked between them, and something unreadable crossed his face. Not pity. Recognition. He shifted Mason's arm over his own shoulder. "You can hate me after we get you medicated." Mason tried to pull away. "I can walk." "No," Luca said. "You can't." The simple authority in his voice made Mason stop arguing. That alone terrified Elena, because Mason argued with everyone. Nico opened the stairwell door an inch. Voices came from the hall. Whitmore said Moretti has the nurse and her brother. Armed suspects. Pharmacy access locked. Elena's stomach clenched. Luca leaned close to Nico. Lights. Nico reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black device. Elena stared. "What is that?" "Insurance," Nico said. He pressed a button. The hallway beyond the stairwell plunged into darkness. For one breath, the entire 3rd floor screamed. Not in panic, in confusion. Machines beeped. Nurses shouted. An officer cursed. Someone called for backup. Luca moved immediately. They slipped into the corridor, under cover of darkness and emergency strobes. Elena kept one hand on Mason's back, the other gripping Luca's sleeve because if she lost him in that chaos, she knew she would never find her way through it again. The hospital she had worked in for 6 years no longer looked familiar. Mercy General had become a battlefield, wearing white walls, wheelchairs abandoned near doors, 4 poles casting long shadows, frightened patients peering from rooms, staff pressed against walls, unsure who to trust. Sprinkler water dripped from Luca's coat and Elena's hair, leaving a trail behind them like evidence. A young resident stepped out from a supply closet and froze when he saw Elena. Ellie? She recognized him instantly. Dr. Aaron Vale, second-year emergency resident. Kind eyes, nervous hands. The only doctor who still said thank you to nurses when he was too exhausted to remember his own name. His gaze jumped to Luca, then Mason, then the blood soaked through Elena's scrubs. "Oh my God," Aaron whispered. Elena stepped forward. "Aaron, I need pharmacy access." His face went pale. "They said you were taken hostage." "I'm not." His eyes moved to Luca again. Luca stared back. Aaron swallowed. "That's Luca Moretti." "Yes," Elena said. "And my brother is about to have a seizure. I need levetiracetam, now." Aaron's breathing quickened. Whitmore locked pharmacy. "Police are..." "Whitmore is dirty." Aaron stared at her. The words sounded insane in the hallway. "Evan to Eleanor." But then, Aaron's face changed. Not disbelief. Fear. Deep, immediate fear. Eleanor noticed. "Aaron," she said slowly. "What do you know?" He looked over his shoulder. Nico cursed softly. "We don't have time for confession." Aaron's voice dropped. "I filed a report last month." Elena's pulse shifted. "About what?" "A patient transfer. Wrong chart. Wrong name. 2 men in suits. Whitmore personally signed the discharge." His eyes flicked toward the ceiling cameras. "Next day my report disappeared. Then my attending told me to stop asking questions if I wanted to finish residency." Luca's face hardened. "You saw the woman in grey." Aaron went still. Elena's skin prickled. "Aaron?" He nodded once. Barely. "She wasn't blonde then. Dark wig. But yes, same woman from the alert Whitmore sent tonight." Elena stared. "Alert?" Aaron looked sick. He sent a staff-wide security image. Said she was a federal informant murdered by Moretti's people. Luca's mouth curved without humor. Efficient. Elena felt the trap tighten again. Whitmore wasn't just covering himself. He was rewriting the truth in real time. Aaron took a shaky breath. "I can get you into pharmacy, but the second I badge in, they'll know." "They already know," Luca said. Aaron looked at Elena. "If I do this, I'm finished here." Elena's heart twisted. She knew that look, the look of someone standing at the edge of a life they had worked too hard to build, knowing one right choice could destroy it. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Aaron gave a weak laugh. "You always covered my med errors before they became med errors." "That's different." "No," he said. "It isn't." He pulled his badge free with trembling fingers. Then the elevator at the far end dinged. Everyone froze. The doors slid open. Dr. Whitmore stepped out with 4 officers and 2 hospital security guards. Perfect suit. Perfect hair. Perfect calm. His eyes found Elena immediately. "There she is," Whitmore said. Aaron went rigid. Luca shifted Mason behind him. Whitmore's gaze passed over the group and landed on Aaron's badge in his hand. Disappointment touched his face. "Dr. Vale," he said softly. "I hoped you were smarter than this." Aaron's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Whitmore took 1 step forward. "Elena, this has gone far enough. Your brother needs medical care. Come with us, and I promise he'll receive it." Elena almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because the lie was so smooth it felt rehearsed for cameras. "You poisoned Matteo Moretti." Whitmore's face did not change. "Luca told you that. I saw the woman. You saw what trauma and fear made you remember." Luca's voice cut through the hall. "Say her name." Whitmore looked at him. For the first time, something faint shifted behind his eyes. A flicker, tiny, but Elena saw it. Luca did too. "Say her name," Luca repeated. Whitmore smiled faintly. You're bleeding through your shirt, Mr. Moretti. Perhaps focus on standing. Mason swayed. Elena caught him. His eyes rolled briefly before he forced them open again. Elena, he whispered. That sound ripped through her. She turned to Aaron. Now, Aaron slammed his badge against the pharmacy access panel. The light flashed red. Access denied. His face drained. Whitmore sighed. I did try to spare you embarrassment. Luca leaned toward Nico. Smoke. Nico threw something small into the corridor. A hiss exploded across the floor. White smoke burst outward, swallowing the officers' legs. Then their bodies. Shouts erupted. One gun fired into the ceiling. Patients screamed from nearby rooms. Luca grabbed Elena's hand, but Elena didn't move away from the pharmacy. She reached past Aaron and typed Whitmore's administrative override. Her fingers flew over the keypad. Patient dignity comes first. Access denied. Her stomach dropped. Whitmore had changed it. Elena, Luca barked. Wait. She stared at the keypad. Think. Whitmore was vain, careful, controlled. A man who smiled in donor photos. A man who built passwords out of slogans because he believed nobody beneath him was smart enough to use them. If he had changed it tonight, he would choose something symbolic, something arrogant, something tied to the lie he was creating. Her eyes lifted to the security alert flashing on the hallway monitor. Armed hostage event. Suspect. Luca Moretti. Elena typed. Moretti. Access denied. She clenched her jaw. Then she typed again. Moretti hostage. Access denied. Mason sagged harder against Luca. Elena? Luca warned. Whitmore's voice cut through the smoke. You cannot win against an institution, Miss Carter. En institution. The word struck. Elena's hand still. Whitmore didn't think of Mercy General as a hospital. He thought of it as his kingdom. She typed one final phrase. Mercy belongs to him. The panel blinked green. Access granted. Aaron stared. How did you... Ego, Elena said. The pharmacy door clicked open. Luca pushed them inside, and Nico slammed the door behind them just as bullets struck the outer wall. Elena moved on instinct. Medication fridge. Emergency seizure kit. Controlled access drawer. Her hands became steady because Mason needed them steady. Luca lowered Mason onto the floor, supporting his head with one hand. Mason's body trembled harder now, breath coming in broken pulls. I'm okay, Mason lied. Elena knelt beside him, drawing up the injection. No, you're not. But you're going to be. Mason's eyes flicked to Luca. Is she always bossy like this? Luca held him still. Worse. Elena shot Luca a look, and for one insane second, in the middle of smoke, gunfire, corruption, and blood, Mason almost smiled. Then his body seized, his back arched. Elena's world collapsed into a single point. Mason! Luca reacted instantly, rolling Mason gently onto his side, protecting his head from the hard floor, exactly as if he had done it before. Elena administered the medication, her hands moving fast, precise, trained. Time it, she snapped. Nico looked startled. Now, he checked his watch. Started. Aaron grabbed oxygen tubing from the emergency cart inside the pharmacy. Here. Elena positioned it with shaking control. Mason, breathe. Come on. Stay with me. Luca kept one hand beneath Mason's head and the other braced against the floor. His face had gone ghost pale now, blood dripping from beneath his bandage onto the pharmacy tile. Elena saw it. She couldn't stop for him. He knew that, so he didn't ask. Outside the pharmacy, Whitmore's voice came through a portable amplifier. Elena Carter, you are endangering your brother's life by refusing medical assistance. Aaron looked toward the door, horrified. He's recording this. Elena's head snapped up. What? Aaron pointed to the corner of the room. The pharmacy security camera. A red light. blinked. Whitmore wasn't trying to talk her down. He was creating footage of Elena with Luca Moretti, footage of Mason seizing, while Elena refused to surrender. Footage he could cut, edit, narrate, and deliver to police, press, hospital board, anyone who needed a clean villain. Here, Luca followed her gaze. His eyes turned lethal. Nico, already on it. Nico pulled out his device and connected it to the pharmacy computer. His fingers flew. Aaron crouched beside him. Hospital systems are segmented. Camera feed runs separate from pharmacy inventory. Nico glared. Do you want to explain network architecture or help? Aaron swallowed. Move. He took the keyboard. Elena kept her focus on Mason, counting breaths, monitoring color, waiting for the seizure to break. Seconds stretched into years. Then Mason's body slowly eased. His breathing remained rough, but the tremors softened. Elena pressed trembling fingers to his pulse. Strong enough. Alive. She lowered her forehead near his shoulder for 1 second and nearly broke. Luca's voice came quietly beside her. He's breathing. She nodded, unable to speak. Mason blinked slowly, disoriented. Did I ruin the escape? A sob laugh caught in Elena's throat. Completely. Sorry. Shut up. His eyes moved to Luca. You kept my head off the floor. Luca looked uncomfortable with the gratitude. Your sister would have killed me otherwise. Mason closed his eyes, weakly. Smart. The pharmacy lights flickered. Nico cursed. Whitmore is cutting power to this wing. Aaron looked up from the computer. I got into camera routing, but there's something else. Luca's gaze sharpened. What? Aaron's face went pale. He turned the monitor toward them. A file directory filled the screen. Patient transfer records. Hidden video clips. Names. Dates. Payment ledgers. And one folder labeled Carter, Elena. Elena's breath stopped. Aaron whispered, He has a file on you. Luca stood slowly, too slowly. Blood loss dragged at him, but the danger in his face sharpened. Open it. Elena wanted to say no. She wanted to close the laptop, take Mason, and run until Mercy General became nothing but a nightmare in the rearview mirror. But the file was already there. Her name, her life, her fear. Aaron opened it. Inside were scanned employee records, her address, Mason's medical history, her mother's debt liens, copies of late rent notices, emergency contacts, shift schedules, then photos. Elena, leaving work. Elena at the pharmacy picking up Mason's medication. Elena asleep in her car during a double shift break. Mason entering their apartment building. Someone had been watching them for weeks. Elena covered her mouth. Mason, still weak on the floor, stared at the screen. What the hell? Aaron scrolled down. At the bottom was an audio file. Luca's voice was barely above a whisper. Play it. Elena looked at him. No. Elena. No. I can't. Luca held her gaze. Whatever is in there, you already survived it. Now, we use it. She hated him for being right. Aaron clicked the file. At first, there was static. Then Whitmore's voice filled the pharmacy speakers. She is ideal, financially vulnerable, minimal family support, dependent sibling, easily pressured. Elena went cold. Another voice answered. Female, smooth, controlled. The woman in grey. She saw me near the restricted elevator. Did she recognize you? No. But she noticed enough. Nurses always do. Whitmore sighed. Then we turn her if necessary. Elena's heart hammered. The woman continued. And if she refuses? A pause. Whitmore's voice came back, calm and clinical. Then, we use the brother, Mason whispered. Elena. The audio kept playing. The woman in grey spoke again. Belandi wants Moretti unstable. If Matteo dies, and Luca believes the nurse has answers, he'll come for her eventually. Elena's blood chilled. Luca went completely still. Whitmore replied, "Good." Then she becomes bait for both sides. The pharmacy fell silent except for Mason's uneven breathing and the distant chaos outside. Elena stared at the screen. B. Not witness. Not accident. B. Her life, Mason's illness, her debts, her exhaustion, her loneliness. None of it had been invisible. It had been studied, measured, prepared. She turned slowly toward Luca. His face had changed. All night, he had carried guilt like a blade turned inward. He believed he had brought danger to her door. But now the truth was worse. Someone had placed her in his path. Someone had planned for him to care, for him to come, for him to bleed, for him to make mistakes. Elena whispered, "They used me to get to you." Luca's eyes lifted to hers. "No," he said. His voice was low. "Final. They used me to get to you." She didn't understand. Not at first. Then Aaron scrolled further down. Another file appeared. Older. Dated 15 years ago. Carter. Rose. Elena's mother. Her stomach dropped. No. Aaron hesitated. Luca stepped closer to the screen. "Open it." Elena shook her head. "No. That's my mother." Mason pushed himself up weakly. Why would they have Mom? Aaron opened the folder. Inside was a scanned police report. A car accident. A warehouse district. One dead man. One surviving woman. Rose Carter. Elena's mother had always said the crash destroyed her life. That it gave her chronic pain, pills, debts, bad luck. That Elena had no idea what sacrifice meant. That everyone left eventually. But Elena had never seen the full report. She had never noticed the name of the dead man. Matteo Moretti's father. Luca stared at the report. His face turned to stone. Mason whispered, "Elena, what is this?" Elena couldn't breathe. Aaron scrolled lower. A witness statement. Rose Carter had survived because someone pulled her from the wreck before the car burned. A young man, 19 years old. Name redacted in the report, but there was a photo attached. Blurry, taken by a traffic camera. A younger Luca Moretti standing in the rain beside the wreckage, blood on his hands, carrying Rose Carter away from the flames. Elena's knees weakened. Luca reached for her automatically, but stopped before touching her, as if he no longer had the right. She looked at him. "You knew my mother?" His jaw worked once. "No, but you saved her." "I saved whoever was breathing." Mason stared at Luca. "That accident killed your father?" Luca's eyes remained on Elena. "Yes." Silence crashed down. The kind that changed every shape inside a room. Elena stepped back. Her shoulder hit the shelf. "My mother always said a Moretti destroyed our family." Luca's gaze darkened. "My father's men blamed her for the crash. Was she?" "I don't know." Elena's voice shook. "Did your family threaten her?" Luca didn't answer quickly enough. That was answer enough. Mason closed his eyes. Oh my God. Elena felt something inside her split open. All these years, her mother's bitterness, her fear, her warnings about men with money, her hatred of names Elena never understood. Moretti, Bellandi. Hospital bills paid anonymously once, then stopped. Threatening calls in the middle of the night when Elena was a child. Moving apartments twice before she turned 12. She had thought it was chaos. Poverty. Bad luck. But maybe her life had always been orbiting the same dark world. Luca's voice came quietly. "Elena, don't. I was 19. My father had enemies everywhere. I didn't know who she was, but your family did." "Yes." Her eyes burned. "And now I'm supposed to trust you?" "No." That stopped her. Luca looked at her with a kind of honesty that hurt more than any lie. You should not trust me because I ask for it. You should watch what I do and decide if it keeps your brother alive. The pharmacy door slammed under impact. Everyone jolted. Nico lifted his gun. They're breaching. Whitmore's voice came through the hallway again, colder now. Elena, you are making a mistake you cannot survive. Elena stared at the file on the screen. Her mother, Luca's father, Matteo's murder, Whitmore's plan, the woman in grey, her brother gasping on the floor, all of it connected, all of it older than tonight. Aaron's fingers shook over the keyboard. There's one more file, Nico snapped. We don't have time. Aaron's face looked hollow. It's labeled grey. Luca's head turned. Elenas pulse spiket. Open it, she said. Aaron clicked. The screen filled with a personnel file. Not hospital staff. Federal Medical Liaison credentials. Fake name, Claire Voss. Real name, Serena Bellandi. Marco Bellandi's older sister. And below her photo was a status note. Active inside Mercy General. Current assignment. Neonatal Intensive Care Wing. Elena went cold all over. Nico. Tiny babies. Exhausted mothers. Restricted access. A wing no one would evacuate quickly without cause. Luca's face became murderous. She's still here. Aaron scrolled, horrified. There's a scheduled transfer tonight, Mason whispered. Transfer of what? Aaron's voice broke. Not what. Who? The file opened into a list of newborn patient IDs. Elena's stomach turned. No. Nico looked sick. They're moving babies? Luca's expression was carved from ice. Bellandi uses medical transfers to move people. Evidence. Witnesses. Children of informants. Anyone who can be erased. Elena backed away from the screen. Her horror became something sharper, bigger than fear, bigger than Mason, bigger than Luca. Mercy General wasn't just hiding criminals. It was feeding them the vulnerable, patients with no power, families with no voice, children who could disappear under paperwork. The pharmacy door buckled again. Whitmore shouted from outside. Last chance! Elena turned toward Luca. He was bleeding, pale, barely standing, but his eyes were on her, waiting, not ordering, waiting, because the next choice had to be hers. That realization changed something inside her. All night, men had been deciding what she was. Witness, weakness, liability, nurse, good girl, collateral. But now she looked at the files, at Mason, at Aaron, at Luca, and understood the one thing Whitmore had missed. A nurse knew where hospitals kept their secrets. She knew which doors stuck, which cameras failed, which stairwells echoed, which doctors lied, which patients had no advocates, which forms could bury a crime, and which alarms could bring an entire building to its knees. Elena wiped the blood from her neck with the back of her hand. Then she looked at Aaron. Can you copy everything? Aaron nodded, stunned. Yes. To an external drive? Yes. To every printer in the hospital? Aaron blinked. What? Elena's voice steadied. Every nurse's station, every doctor lounge, every administrative office, every waiting room printer connected to the network. I want Whitmore's files printing where no one can stop all of them at once. Nico slowly smiled. I like her. Luca's gaze stayed on Elena, dark and unreadable. But something in his expression had changed. Not possession, not protection, respect. Aaron started typing. Elena turned to Nico. Can you send it outside the hospital? To who? Everyone. Nico's smile widened. That I can do. Whitmore's voice thundered from outside. Open this door! Mason struggled upright. Elena, you're about to start a war. She looked at her brother, then at Luca. No, she said. I'm ending the part they thought they controlled. Aaron hit enter. For half a second, nothing happened. Then, somewhere beyond the pharmacy walls, printers began waking up. On, down hallways, across departments, at front desks, in waiting rooms, in offices where administrators hid behind locked doors. Paper began spilling into the hospital. Patient transfer records, payment ledgers, security photos, audio transcripts, Whitmore's passwords, Serena Belandi's file, Elena Carter's file. The truth began printing in black ink all over Mercy General. Outside the pharmacy, the shouting changed. Confusion, panic, officers yelling, nurses gasping. Someone screamed, "What is this?" Whitmore went silent. For the first time all night, he had lost control of the story. Luca stepped beside Elena. "You understand what you just did?" "Yes. They'll come harder now." Elena looked at the pharmacy door as it began to crack. "Then we stop running." Luca's eyes burned into hers. Mason groaned from the floor. "I vote we keep running a little." Despite everything, Elena almost smiled. Then the door burst open. Smoke rolled in. Whitmore stood outside with a gun in his hand. No more gentle voice. No more polished administrator. His mask was gone. Behind him, officers stared at the printed files in their hands. Confusion splitting the line between bought loyalty and horrified truth. Whitmore aimed directly at Elena. "You stupid girl." Luca moved in front of her instantly, but Elena stepped out from behind him. Luca's hand shot toward her. Elena. She didn't stop. Whitmore's gun trembled. "Not much. Enough. You built this hospital like a kingdom," Elena said. "But you forgot who keeps it alive at night." Whitmore's eyes narrowed. Behind him, nurses began stepping out of patient rooms. One, then another, then another. Some held printed pages. Some held phones recording. Some stood shaking, but they stood. Aaron moved beside Elena. Then Nico. Then Luca, bleeding and silent at her shoulder. Whitmore looked around and understood too late that the hostage story was dying in real time. The hospital was watching. "Elena," Whitmore said carefully, trying one last time to put the mask back on. "You don't know what these people will do to you." Elena's voice was quiet. "Yes, I do." A shot rang out. For one impossible moment, nobody moved. Elena felt Luca's body slam into hers. Then his weight drove her backward into the pharmacy shelves. Pain burst through her shoulder. Mason screamed her name. Luca's arms were around her, shielding her completely, his body between her and the gun. Elena looked down. Blood spread across Luca's chest. Fresh, dark, fussed. His knees gave. "No," she whispered. Luca collapsed against her. Elena caught him as far as she could, but his weight dragged them both to the floor. Chaos erupted around them. Nico fired. Officers shouted. Whitmore disappeared behind smoke and bodies, but Elena heard none of it. She only saw Luca, his face pale, his breath shallow, his hand still gripping her sleeve like the first time in the alley, only weaker now, much weaker. "Elena." It rasped. She pressed both hands to the wound. "Don't talk." His eyes found hers, still dark, still commanding, still impossibly calm. "Your brother, Mason, is alive. You stay with me." "Elena." I said don't talk. His mouth curved faintly, almost a smile. Then his eyes shifted past her, toward the corridor, toward the shouting, toward the war he knew was coming. "She's in the NICU," he whispered. "Serena." Elena froze. Luca's breathing hitched. She won't leave empty-handed. A cold horror spread through Elena's chest. The babies. The transfer. Serena Belandi was still moving, still hunting, still inside the hospital while everyone was distracted by Whitmore. Elena looked from Luca's bleeding body to the corridor beyond. Mason crawled toward them, pale but conscious. Nico shouted orders. Aaron pressed gauze into her hands. The hospital shook with alarms, truth, and gunfire. Luca's fingers tightened weakly around her wrist. "Go," he breathed. Elena shook her head, tears blurring her vision. No. His eyes held hers, not pleading, commanding, trusting. "Save them." The words broke something in her, because now she understood. Protection was not always standing behind the dangerous man. Sometimes it was becoming dangerous enough to walk away from him when someone else needed saving. Elena pressed Aaron's hands over Luca's wound. "Keep pressure. Do not let him die." Aaron's eyes widened. "Elena, do not let him die." Mason grabbed her arm. "I'm coming with you." "No, Elena." She turned on him with tears in her eyes. "You just had a seizure, and you're about to chase a kidnapper into the NICU." Nico appeared beside them, blood on his cheek, gun in hand. "She doesn't go alone." Elena looked at Luca one last time. He was barely conscious, but his eyes were still on her. For once, he was the one left behind. For once, she was the one walking into the dark. Elena stood. Blood covered her scrubs. Rainwater dripped from her hair. Her hand shook, but her voice did not. "Nico," she said, "take me to the NICU." Behind her, Luca Moretti lay bleeding on the pharmacy floor. Ahead of her, Serena Belandi was stealing through the most fragile wing of Mercy General. And Elena Carter, the nurse they had chosen because they thought she was breakable, walked into the wall they had built around her. The hallway to the NICU was too quiet. That was the first thing that frightened Elena. Mercy General had been screaming for the last hour. Alarms, gunfire, intercom orders, nurses shouting, elevators locking down, printers vomiting secrets into every corner of the building. But the corridor leading to neonatal intensive care sat under a strange, smothered silence, as if the hospital itself had started holding its breath. Nico moved beside her with his gun low and his eyes sharp. Elena walked fast, one hand pressed against the wall to keep herself steady. Her scrubs clung cold to her skin. Blood dried along her throat, where Marco's knife had kissed her. Luca's blood still stained both of her hands. She could feel it there, warm, in memory, slipping between her fingers as his body collapsed against hers. "Go. Save them." Her chest tightened so violently she almost stopped. Nico noticed without looking at her. "He's hard to kill." Elena swallowed. "That's not a medical diagnosis." "No," Nico said. "It's a warning." She glanced at him. He didn't smile. Ahead, the NICU doors glowed behind reinforced glass. Normally, the unit felt soft even under stress-dim lights. Hushed voices, exhausted parents, tiny monitors beeping around lives that had begun too early. Tonight, it looked abandoned. No nurses at the desk, no parents in the waiting area, no security guard by the doors. Only a single hospital blanket on the floor and a bottle of hand sanitizer slowly leaking from a cracked dispenser. Elena's stomach dropped. "No," she whispered. Nico raised his gun. "Stay behind me." She ignored him and ran to the access panel. Her bed shook in her hand. The light flashed red. "Lockdown. Active." Elena swore and tried again. "Rit." Nico stepped close. "Can you override?" "I can. If Whitmore didn't." The doors suddenly clicked, unlocked from the inside. Elena froze. Nico pulled her back with one arm. The glass doors slid open. Cold air breathed out. And from inside the NICU, a woman's voice called softly, "Come in, Elena." Elena's blood turned to ice. Serena Belandi stood at the far end of the unit beneath the blue-white glow of neonatal monitors. She looked nothing like the blurry security image now. No grey coat, no blonde wig. Her dark hair was tied neatly at the base of her neck. She wore navy scrubs and a surgical mask pulled below her chin, as if she belonged there. as if she had spent years blending into sterile rooms and fragile lives. A hospital badge hung from her collar. The name on it read, Dr. Claire Voss. In her arms, wrapped in a white hospital blanket, was a newborn baby. Elena stopped breathing. The baby was so small its face barely showed above the blanket. A tiny oxygen line rested near its cheek. Serena smiled. Not cruelly. That was what made it worse. She looked calm, professional, almost kind. "Lower your weapon," Serena said to Nico. "Unless you want the preemie unit to become a shooting..." Nico's gun stayed raised, but Elena touched his arm. "Don't." His jaw tightened. "Elena, don't." Around the unit, several incubators glowed under dim lights. Some were empty. Some held babies still connected to monitors. 2 nurses sat on the floor near the medication cabinet, hands zip-tied, eyes wide with terror. One had blood on her temple. Elena recognized her. "Jenna," she whispered. The nurse shook her head once. A warning. Serena followed Elena's gaze. "They're alive. For now." Elena stepped forward slowly. "Put the baby down." Serena looked at the infant in her arms with an expression that might have passed for tenderness if Elena didn't know what she was. "This one is important," Serena said. "Baby girl, 29 weeks. Mother under protective custody. Father scheduled to testify against Belandi accounts next week." She looked up. Funny how fragile justice becomes when it weighs less than 3 pounds. Rage rose through Elena so fast it steadied her. Her name. Serena tilted her head. "What?" "Her name," Elena said again. "She is not a file. She is not leverage. She is not cargo." "What is her name?" For the first time. Serena's smile thinned. Elena knew she had hit something. Not guilt. Control. People like Serena needed distance. Fake names. File numbers. Transfers. Labels. Anything that kept a human life from becoming real. One of the tied nurses whispered, "Lily." Elena's throat tightened. "Babe Lily." Serena's eyes flicked coldly toward the nurse. "That was unnecessary." "No," Elena said. That was the only thing in this room that mattered. Behind Serena, 2 Belandi men emerged from the shadows near the transport incubators. One held a gun. The other carried a sealed medical transfer case. Nico shifted closer to Elena. "Too visible," he murmured. Elena whispered back, "There are 3. Nico's eyes moved. "How do you know?" "The supply cart near the sink is turned wrong. Someone's behind it." Nico's mouth barely moved. "You notice everything." "I'm a nurse." "No," he said quietly. "You're becoming a problem." Serena laughed softly, as if she had heard enough to be amused. That is exactly what Dr. Whitmore failed to understand. Elena's eyes sharpened. "Whitmore is finished." Whitmore was useful. Serena shrugged. Useful men often mistake themselves for powerful men. "You killed Matteo." Serena's face remained smooth, but her eyes hardened. "He was sentimental," she said. "Like his brother." Elena's hands curled. "He was investigating stolen patients. He was interfering with business." "You poisoned him." "I corrected a mistake." Serena adjusted the blanket around Lily with careful fingers. Matteo thought truth mattered because Luca taught him loyalty. But loyalty is just a chain men pretend is honor. Elena heard Luca's voice in memory. "My brother's name was Matteo." She remembered the way his face changed when he said it. The grief he carried like a loaded weapon. "You're afraid of Luca," Elena said. Serena's eyes flicked up. There, a crack. Tiny. Elena stepped into it. "That's why you used me. That's why you used Mason. That's why you needed Whitmore and Marco and files and fake transfers." Her voice steadied. "Because even wounded, even betrayed, even outnumbered, you knew Luca would come." Serena's smile disappeared. Nico looked briefly impressed. Serena shifted Lily slightly in her arms. "Careful, Elena." "No," Elena said. "You were careful. For months, maybe years, hiding behind scrubs, badges, dead charts, restricted elevators. You moved through hospitals because nobody thinks evil wears gloves and whispers near incubators. Serena stared at her. The monitors beeped softly around them. Elena took one more step. But you made one mistake. Serena's eyes narrowed. And what is that? You came to a place where women know how to keep people alive under pressure. Jenna, still bound on the floor, slowly shifted her foot. The other tied nurse did the same. Nico saw it. Elena kept Serena's eyes on her. You think nurses are soft because we speak gently, Elena said. But we hold pressure on bullet wounds, while men twice our size scream. We catch doctors' mistakes before they become funerals. We lift bodies. We remember allergies. We notice lies. We fight death for 12 hours and still go home to unpaid bills. Her voice dropped. You picked the wrong wing. A crash exploded from the medication side of the room. Jenna threw her body sideways into the rolling supply cart. The hidden Belandi man behind it stumbled out. Startled, Nico fired once. The bullet struck the man's shoulder and sent him crashing into the wall. Chaos detonated. The gunman near the transport incubator lifted his weapon. Elena lunged for the nearest bassinet and slammed it sideways into his knees. He fell hard, gun skidding across the floor. Nico tackled the second man before he could reach Serena. Serena backed toward the emergency exit with Lily in her arms. Elena ran after her. Stop. Serena grabbed a syringe from the transfer case with one hand and held it near the baby's IV line. Elena froze. Every sound in the room vanished. Even Nico stopped. Serena's face was calm again. Enough, she said. Elena's heart pounded so hard she felt it in her throat. What is that? Serena glanced at the syringe. Something that will make this child very quiet. Jenna sobbed from the floor. Nico's gun trained on Serena's head. Put it down. Serena smiled faintly. Shoot me, and my hand drops. Elena lifted both hands slowly. Look at me. Serena's eyes shifted. Not to Nico. To Elena. Good. Lily needs oxygen support, Elena said carefully. If you take her out of this unit without the right transport setup, she crashes before you reach the loading dock. I have transport. No, you have equipment. That is not the same as care. Serena's eyes darkened. You really believe that uniform makes you noble? No, Elena said. I believe the baby in your arms is alive, and that means I still have a job. Something flashed behind Serena's eyes. Annoyance. Not panic. Not yet. Then, a phone rang. Serena's phone. She didn't answer. It rang again, and again. Nico's earpiece crackled softly. His expression changed. Elena saw it. What? She whispered. Nico's voice dropped. Luca's awake. Her breath caught. Serena heard it too. For the first time, her calm slipped. Nico's mouth curved slightly. And he knows where we are. Serena's grip tightened around Lily. Elena's pulse spiked. Don't. Serena backed toward the exit. Then everyone should hope he arrives slowly. The NICU doors behind Elena slid open. Not quietly. Not gently. They slammed wide, with a force that made everyone turn. Luca stood in the doorway. He should not have been standing. His black shirt was soaked through with blood. Fresh bandages were wrapped beneath his coat, already darkening. Aaron stood behind him, pale and terrified, one hand still holding medical tape like he had been physically unable to keep Luca down. Mason stood beside Aaron, leaning heavily against the wall, but conscious. Elena, Mason breathed. Relief nearly broke her, but she couldn't look away from Serena. Luca stepped into the unit. Every monitor seemed louder. Every shadow sharpened. Serena stared at him. For the first time, Elena saw fear on her face. Real fear. Luca's eyes did not move to the baby, did not move to Nico, did not even move to Elena for more than half a second. They stayed on Serena Belandi. You killed my brother, he said. His voice was quiet. That made it terrifying. Serena lifted the syringe closer to Lily's IV line. "And if you come closer, I kill another innocent person in front of you." Luca stopped. Elena's heart twisted because she saw the pain move through him. Not visible to anyone else, maybe, but she saw it. Matteo, his father, all the dead he carried, all the times enemies had tried to make his love into a trigger. Serena smiled faintly. "There he is, the noble monster. You can murder half of Chicago, Luca, but you still hesitate when someone small enough cries." Luca's face hardened. "You always mistook restraint for weakness, and you always mistook obsession for loyalty." Serena's gazes lied to Elena. "Tell me, nurse, did he make you feel chosen? Protected? Special?" Her smile turned cruel. "That is what Moretti men do. They wrap chains in devotion and call it safety." Elena's throat tightened. Luca's eyes flicked to her. Just once. There was no command in them now, no demand, only the terrible openness of a man who knew his darkness had finally been named in front of her. Serena continued, "Ask him why your mother ran after the crash. Ask him why the Carter file existed before Whitmore ever touched it. Ask him how long his family has known your name." Elena went cold. Luca's jaw tightened. Serena saw it and smiled. "Oh, he didn't tell you." Elena's voice came out barely above a whisper. "Luca?" Luca did not look away from Serena. "This is not the time." "That means yes." Serena laughed softly. "Of course it does." Luca's voice turned lethal. "Say another word to her, and I will forget the child in your arms is the reason you are still breathing." Serena's hand trembled. Only slightly, but enough. Lily made a tiny sound. A weak, fragile cry. The sound pierced Elena straight through. Everything else vanished. The secrets, the Mafia bloodlines, the betrayals, Luca's past, her mother's past. All of it could wait. Lily could not. Elena stepped forward. Luca's eyes sharpened. "Elena." She didn't stop. Serena watched her. "Brave or stupid? Both," Elena said. She held Serena's gaze and softened her voice, the way she did with panicking parents, violent patients, dying strangers, frightened children. "You don't want to inject her." Serena's mouth curved. "You don't know what I want." "Yes, I do." Elena took another slow step. "You want control. You want everyone looking at the syringe instead of the door. You want Luca frozen. You want Nico afraid to shoot. You want me desperate." Serena's eyes narrowed. Elena moved closer. "But killing Lily gets you nothing. The second you do it, Luca stops caring whether you leave this room alive." Luca's silence confirmed every word. Serena's throat moved. Elena took one final step, close enough now to see Lily's tiny eyelids flutter, close enough to see the syringe was angled wrong. Serena knew how to kill, but she was not a neonatal nurse. Elena lifted her hands. "Give her to me." Serena smiled. "No." Luca moved slightly. Serena jerked the syringe down. Elena moved faster. She seized Serena's wrist with one hand and supported Lily's head with the other, twisting her own body between the needle and the baby. Serena hissed and tried to pull back, but Jenna, still on the floor, still bound, hooked her foot around Serena's ankle. Serena stumbled. The syringe fell. Luca crossed the room in a blur. He caught Serena by the throat and slammed her back against the wall, not hard enough to crush, but hard enough to end the fight. Nico kicked the syringe away. Elena pulled Lily into her arms and turned immediately toward the incubator. "Jenna, oxygen." "I'm tied." Mason moved before anyone could stop him. Weak, shaking, barely steady, he grabbed surgical scissors from the counter and cut Jenna's zip tie. She scrambled up and ran to Elena's side. "Elena, your shots are dropping." "I know. Warm blanket. Check the line." "Nico, Move that transport case away from the door. Nico looked from Luca to Elena. She snapped, "Now!" He obeyed. Luca still had Serena pinned to the wall, his hand around her throat, his face inches from hers. All the grief in him had turned into something ancient and merciless. "You poisoned Matteo," he said. Serena gasped, but her eyes remained vicious. He begged at the end. Luca's hand tightened. Elena looked up sharply. Luca. He didn't hear her. Or maybe he did, and the part of him listening was buried under years of blood. Serena smiled through the pressure. "He said your name." Luca's expression broke, just for a second, enough to turn him into a grieving brother instead of a mafia boss. Then it vanished behind murder. Elena handed Lily carefully to Jenna and crossed the room. "Luca." Nico stepped toward her. "Don't." She ignored him. Luca's fingers tightened around Serena's throat. Serena's face flushed. Elena placed her blood-stained hand over Luca's wrist. He froze. Not because she was strong enough to stop him, because she touched him. "Look at me," she whispered. His eyes remained on Serena. "Luca, look at me." Slowly. His gaze shifted. What she saw there nearly shattered her. Rage, yes, but beneath it, grief so deep it had no bottom. "She killed him," he said. "I know. She made him suffer. I know. She will do it again. Not tonight." His breathing was uneven. Elena lowered her voice. "If you kill her here, Whitmore's people turn this into exactly what they said it was. Luca Moretti murdering a medical worker in the NICU. Everything we exposed becomes noise. Every baby she tried to move becomes forgotten. Matteo becomes a criminal footnote instead of a victim." His jaw flexed. Serena rasped a laugh. "Listen to your nurse, Luca." Elena's eyes snapped to Serena. "No," she said coldly. "You don't get to use my voice." Serena's smile faded. Elena looked back at Luca. "Let her live long enough to talk." The room held its breath. Luca's fingers loosened. Serena dropped to the floor, coughing. Nico immediately restrained her, zip-tying her hands behind her back. Luca stepped back, swaying slightly. Elena saw the blood spreading under his coat. "Sit down," she said. "No. You are actively bleeding in the NICU." I said no, and I said sit down. His eyes flashed. Then Mason, leaning against the counter, muttered, "Please listen before she starts yelling. It's humiliating for everyone." For one impossible second, silence fell. Then Jenna let out a hysterical laugh that turned into a sob. Even Nico looked away like he was hiding a smile. Luca stared at Mason. Then, slowly, painfully, he lowered himself onto a chair beside an empty incubator. Elena pressed fresh gauze to his wound. Her hands trembled now that Lily was safe. Luca noticed. His voice dropped so only she could hear. "You saved her." Elena didn't look at him. "We're not done." "No," he said. "We're not." Serena coughed from the floor. "You think files and heroic nurses change anything? My father owns judges. My family owns police. Whitmore was one door. We have hundreds." Nico tightened the zip tie until she winced. Then we knocked louder. A sudden explosion rocked the building. The lights flickered violently. A deep boom rolled up from somewhere below. Everyone froze. Then the fire alarm changed pitch. Jenna looked at the monitor. That came from the ambulance bay. Nico's earpiece erupted with voices. He pressed a hand to it, face tightening. "What?" Luca demanded. Nico looked at him. Bilandi reinforcements just hit the hospital. Mason's face went pale. "How many?" Nico didn't answer. That was answer enough. Another explosion shook the floor. This time, closer. A baby began crying in one of the incubators. Then another. Then another. The NICU filled with tiny, terrified sounds, sharper than any siren. Elena turned toward the windows. Outside, through rain-streaked glass, headlights poured into the hospital driveway below. Black SUVs. One after another. Men moved through the storm. with weapons hidden beneath coats. Not a few rivals hunting a wounded man anymore. An army. Luca stood despite Elena's hand trying to hold him down. His face had gone pale, but his eyes were alive with cold fire. Nico moved to the doorway. "We need to evacuate the unit." "With premature infants?" Jenna said. "We can't just run." Elena looked around the NICU. 5 babies still inside. 2 nurses. Mason barely standing. Luca bleeding. Serena alive but dangerous. Belandi men coming up from below. Whitmore possibly escaped. Police confused. Corrupt. Or both. The entire hospital was a war zone, and the most fragile patients in the building were trapped in its center. Elena's fear returned, then hardened. She pointed to Jenna. "Call every nurse you trust. No intercom. Personal phones only. We move the babies in transport incubators to the old radiology wing. It has backup power, thick doors, and only 2 entrances." Jenna nodded, already moving. Elena turned to Aaron, who had finally reached the doorway, breathless from chasing Luca. "Find respiratory. I need portable oxygen, battery packs, thermal blankets, and anyone who knows neonatal transport." Aaron nodded. "On it." "Mason, you stay with Jenna." Mason immediately shook his head. "No." Elena's voice sharpened. "This is not negotiable. Neither is me leaving you. You can barely stand. You keep saying that to everyone." Luca looked at Mason. "Protect the babies." Mason stopped. The words changed him. Not because Luca ordered him, because Luca gave him something useful to do. Mason swallowed and nodded. "Yeah, okay." Elena looked at Luca. He had known exactly what Mason needed. That made her chest ache. Then another burst of gunfire echoed from the lower floors. Nico's expression darkened. "They're coming up the east stairwell." Luca pulled a gun from one of Nico's men. Elena stared. "You were shot 10 minutes ago, and I sat down. That is not recovery. It will have to do." Nico looked at him. "Boss, with respect, you can't hold a stairwell like this." Luca checked the weapon. "Then don't miss." Elena stepped in front of him. "No." Luca's eyes locked on hers. The room went quiet around them. "Move," he said. "No." "Elena, you told me to save them," she said. "That includes you." Something flickered across his face. "Fine. Not from the wound, from the fact that she meant it." He lowered his voice. "If I don't stop them at the stairwell, they reach this room, and if you collapse in the hallway, we lose you. And they still reach this room. I don't collapse. You already did once." His jaw tightened. Nico looked like he wanted to disappear. Elena stepped closer, lowering her voice so only Luca could hear. "You are not just a weapon." His eyes darkened. For a second, she thought he might argue. Then Serena laughed from the floor. "Beautiful," she rasped. "That is how it starts. She teaches the monster he has a soul. Then she cries when the soul doesn't save her." Elena turned. Before she could speak, Mason crossed the room and crouched in front of Serena. His face was pale, his body still weak, but his eyes were clear. "You know," he said, "for someone tied up on a NICU floor, you talk a lot." Serena stared at him. Nico actually smiled this time. Mason looked at Elena. "Sorry. Continue saving everyone." Elena almost cried. Instead, she turned back to Luca. "We do this smart," she said, "not dramatic." His mouth twitched faintly. "You say that like dramatic has not been working." "Luca." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "Tell me." Elena pointed down the hall. "We don't hold the stairwell, we flood it." Jenna looked up. "What?" "The fire suppression line near the east stairwell is separate from the NICU system. If we trigger pressure release, the lower landing floods. They'll slow down, slip, lose visibility. Then Nico's men can block without getting pinned in a straight gunfight." Nico stared. "How do you know that?" Elena gave him a look. Because last year maintenance flooded pediatrics and blamed the nurses for storing blankets near the valve. Luca's eyes burned with something close to pride. "Do it," he said. Elena moved fast. No more trembling. No more asking permission. She pulled open the emergency maintenance panel beside the NICU medication room, entered the override code she had watched maintenance use a dozen times, and forced the pressure release. For 2 seconds, nothing happened. Then a violent rush echoed through the walls. From somewhere down the hall, men shouted. Water thundered into the stairwell. Nico looked impressed. That's evil. It's plumbing. It can be both. Luca moved to the doorway, aiming down the hall as Belandi men appeared through the spray and smoke. Nico and 2 Moretti loyalists took positions behind overturned equipment carts. Gunfire erupted. Elena flinched, but did not stop. She helped Jenna prep the first transport incubator. Tiny Lily was stabilized, oxygen secured, battery connected. Another nurse arrived. Then another, shoes skidding on wet floors, faces terrified but determined. The truth had reached them. The printed files, the whispered calls, the knowledge that the hospital they served had been selling the people inside it. And now, they came anyway. One nurse carried portable monitors. Another pushed a transport isolette. A respiratory therapist arrived barefoot, having lost one shoe in the chaos. "Who's leading transport?" he gasped. Every eye turned to Elena. For a second, she almost looked behind her. Then she realized. Here, Elena Carter, who had been bait. Elena Carter, who had been broke, exhausted, overlooked, studied, targeted. Elena Carter, whose name had been inside a predator's file. Now the NICU waited for her orders. She drew one breath. Lily goes first with Jenna and Mason. 2 nurses per incubator. Stay low. No elevators. West service corridor to radiology. If gunfire starts, lock wheels and cover the incubator, not yourselves. Jenna nodded. Mason looked at Elena. "I'm not leaving you behind. You are helping Lily. That's not leaving me." He swallowed. Then he pushed the incubator. The first team moved. Gunfire cracked again from the hallway. Luca fired twice. One Belandi man dropped behind the flooded corner. Another dragged him back. Nico shouted, "More coming!" Elena moved to the next baby. A little boy named Noah. Then twins, Ava and Grace. Then the last, Matteo. Elena froze when she read the name on the bassinet tag. Matteo. Her eyes lifted involuntarily to Luca. He had heard. Of course he had. For 1 second, across gunfire, smoke, water, and terrified nurses, Luca looked at the tiny baby bearing his brother's name. Something shifted in his face. A grief so quiet it nearly undid Elena. Then a bullet shattered the glass wall beside him. Elena screamed his name. Luca ducked, turned, fired, and kept standing. Barely, but standing. The evacuation moved inch by inch. Every foot of hallway felt like a war. Nurses pushed incubators through smoke, while Moretti men covered corners. Hospital staff Elena barely knew emerged from rooms to help. An orderly carrying oxygen tanks, a janitor unlocking service doors, a pediatric nurse tearing curtains into makeshift straps. Not everyone was brave. Some hid, some cried, some ran. But enough stayed. Enough chose. That was the difference between a building and a hospital. People who stayed. Then Marco appeared at the far end of the corridor. Blood streaked his face. His wrist hung wrong from Luca's grip earlier, but he held a gun in his other hand. 2 men flanked him. His eyes found Elena. Still playing hero, nurse? Luca turned instantly. So did Nico. But Marco didn't aim at Luca. He aimed at the transport incubator, carrying baby Matteo. Elena's body moved before thought. She threw herself across the incubator as the shot rang out. Pain tore across her upper arm. Hot, sharp, immediate. She hit the floor beside the wheels. "Elena," Luca Moretti. The sound shook the hallway. Everything changed. Luca surged forward despite his wound, despite the blood, despite Elena screaming at him to stop. Nico fired cover. Marco backed away, suddenly realizing the thing he had provoked was not a man anymore but a storm given flesh. Luca reached him in 3 strides. Marco shot again. The bullet went wide. Luca slammed him into the wall so hard the framed evacuation map cracked behind his head. Marco tried to lift the gun. Luca broke his arm. The sound was sickening. Marco screamed. Luca took the weapon and pressed it beneath Marco's jaw. Elena pushed herself up, clutching her bleeding arm. Luca! His finger tightened. Marco's eyes rolled with terror. Elena! Nico warned softly. She staggered toward him. Luca! No. Marco laughed through blood and pain. Listen to her. Good dog. Luca's face went blank. That frightened Elena more than rage. She reached him and grabbed his sleeve with her uninjured hand. Look at me. He didn't. Luca. Marco spat blood. She'll never love what you really are. Luca's finger moved on the trigger. Elena stepped between them. The gun now pointed past her shoulder. Nico swore. Elena, move. She didn't. Luca's eyes finally snapped to hers. There was fury there, and fear, real fear, because she had put herself in the one place he could not shoot. Move, he said. No, he shot you. It grazed me. He aimed at a baby, and he will answer for it. He deserves. Yes, Elena cut in, voice shaking. He deserves everything you want to do, but not here, not in front of them, not while they need us. Luca's breathing was ragged. Blood dripped from his shirt onto the flooded floor. Marco smiled weakly behind her. She owns you now. Elena did not turn around. Her eyes stayed on Luca. No, she whispered. I'm asking you. That landed. Not command. Not guilt. Choice. Luca stared at her for a long, terrible second. Then he lowered the gun. Nico exhaled. Elena nearly collapsed from relief. Luca handed the gun to Nico without looking away from Elena. Take him, he said. Nico seized Marco and slammed him face down into the wet floor. The evacuation continued. Elena let Luca examine her arm for exactly 3 seconds before pulling away. It's a graze. You're bleeding. So are you. His eyes darkened. Elena, laughter. That is my line. Now it's mine. The last incubator rolled into the West Service corridor. Ava and Grace, Noah, Lily, Matteo, all moving, all alive. Serena, restrained and furious, was dragged along by 2 Moretti men because Elena had insisted she not disappear into the chaos. The group pushed toward old radiology. Behind them, the east wing shook with another explosion. Ceiling tiles dropped. Sprinklers burst. Smoke rolled low and black. Belandi reinforcements had reached the upper floors. Nico shouted into his comms, ordering men to block corridors. Aaron appeared again, carrying medical supplies and looking like a man who had aged 10 years in one night. Elena, he called. Radiology's open, but Whitmore's gone. Luca's head turned. Gone where? Aaron shook his head. Nobody knows. Serena laughed from where she was being dragged. Everyone stopped. Luca walked toward her slowly. Elena followed, pressing gauze to her arm. Serena looked up from the floor. Wet hair stuck to her face, eyes glittering with hatred. You still don't see it, she said. Luca crouched in front of her. Speak. Serena smiled. Whitmore wasn't running the operation. Nico's face hardened. Then who was? Serena looked at Elena. Not Luca. Elena's stomach tightened. Serena's smile widened. Ask Rose Carter. The world went quiet. Elena felt the name like a slap. My mother has nothing to do with this. Serena's expression was almost pitying. Oh, Elena. She leaned forward as much as the restraints allowed. Your mother wasn't hiding from the Morettis all these years. Luca went still beside her. Serena's eyes gleamed. She was hiding from what she helped build. Elena couldn't move. Mason, standing near Lily's incubator, turned slowly. "What did you say?" Serena looked delighted now. The crash 15 years ago wasn't an accident. It was a transfer gone wrong. Rose Carter was the nurse assigned to move the witness. Luca's father tried to stop it. Belandi tried to steal it. Everyone lied afterward. Elena shook her head. "No." Serena's voice lowered. "Your mother knows where the original ledger is?" Luca stared at Elena. His face was unreadable, but his eyes had sharpened. Original ledger. The one thing bigger than hospital files. The one thing worth killing Matteo for. The one thing worth watching Elena for weeks. Elena's breathing turned shallow. Her mother. Bitter, drunk, guilty, always calling for money. Always warning Elena that good people got punished because they trusted the wrong men. Had she known? Had she been protecting Elena? Or using her? Before anyone could speak, Mason's phone rang. Everyone looked at him. His face went pale when he saw the screen. Unknown number. Elena crossed the room. "Don't answer." But Luca's eyes narrowed. "Put it on speaker." Mason's hand shook as he accepted the call. For 1 second, only static. Then a woman's voice came through. Hoarse. Older. Familiar enough to make Elena's stomach collapse. "Ellie?" Elena stopped breathing. "Mom?" Rose Carter inhaled sharply on the other end. "Listen to me. You need to get out of Mercy General now." Elena's eyes burned. "What did you do?" A pause. "Too long." "Elena, what did you do?" Rose's voice broke. "I tried to fix it," Mason whispered. "Mom?" Rose made a sound like a sob. "My sweet boy." Luca stepped closer to the phone, his voice cold. "Rose Carter." Silence. Then Rose whispered, "Luca." Elena looked at him. He knew that voice. Maybe not from memory. From nightmares. Rose spoke quickly now, fear tearing through every word. "They're coming for the ledger." Whitmore failed. Serena failed. Marco failed. That means Belandi Sr. will clean the hospital himself. Nico went rigid. "Salvatore Belandi is here?" Serena's smile returned. Rose whispered, "He's already inside." The lights died. All at once. The NICU corridor, the service hall, the radiology doors ahead. Everything vanished into black. Then emergency red light flickered back on. Far down the hall, elevator doors opened. A group of men stepped out in silence. At their center walked an older man in a black overcoat, silver hair slicked back, one gloved hand resting on a cane. Salvatore Belandi. The hospital seemed to recoil around him. Even Luca went still. Serena lowered her head slightly. Marco, bleeding on the floor beneath Nico's grip, laughed weakly. "Father." Salvatore's eyes moved over the wreckage. His daughter restrained. His son broken. The babies evacuated. The files exposed. Then his gaze settled on Elena. Not Luca. Elena. Rose's voice screamed through the phone. "Ellie, run." Salvatore Belandi smiled. "My dear Elena," he said, voice smooth as old blood. "You have something that belongs to me." Elena's hand tightened around Mason's phone. Luca stepped in front of her, but this time, Salvatore only smiled wider. "Oh, Luca," he said softly. Still standing in front of Carter women, Luca's face turned to stone. The words struck the hallway like a match. Elena looked at Luca, then at the phone, then at Salvatore. Something ancient and terrible had just opened beneath all of them, and the war that had begun with a wounded man in the rain was no longer about hiding Luca Moretti. It was about why Elena Carter had been chosen long before she ever met him.